Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning Board meeting for March 16th, 2021. My name is Carrie Martinek. I'm Chair of the Planning Board. I will start off with a few announcements before we get moving forward with tonight's agenda. This open meeting of the Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, the town of Northborough has been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of the planning board are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows the planning board to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. As of now, I will confirm that members and staff are present. If you could please respond in the affirmative. Members, when I call your name. We have Millie Milton.
Here.
Amy Pretsky.
Here.
Anthony Zaitin.
Here.
And Michelle Gillespie.
Here.
Great. And staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kathy Joubert.
Here.
And Fred Litchfield.
Here.
Great. Okay, so ground rules for the meeting. I will invite each speaker on the agenda by name to make a presentation and speak to their application. Participants will provide their full name and hold until their name is called. Each speaker will be asked to mute their phone or computer or not speaking and speak clearly and in a way that will help generate accurate meeting minutes. Those responding will be asked to wait until the floor is yielded to them by the chair. Speakers who wish to respond to the comments of others do so through the chair, taking care to identify themselves. Each vote taken by the board or committee will be conducted by roll call vote. For items of public comment, which we will have this evening, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comments as follows. By phone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized by the chair. Please note that part of your phone number will be visible to those viewing the meeting. By Zoom, click raise hand on the bottom of your screen and wait to be recognized. The chair will ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of public commentators, the chair will call on each name and afford around 3 minutes for comments. No executive session this evening, and that is it. So with that and the announcements squared away, why don't we get started with tonight's agenda? First on our agenda tonight, we have the public hearing for 1 Lyman Street. I'm missing the description here, but that's okay. Why don't we pull in the people that are presenting this evening? So for 1 Lyman, let's see. Do I have Marshall Gould? Is that right? Marshall, is that who's presenting 1 Lyman?
This is Vito Colonna with Cornerstone.
Oh, you're already, just you, Vito?
Yeah, Marshall should be here. There he is. He just popped
Okay.
on.
And then we
The
have
applicant, Jeff Jang should be on, and Alok is the architect, and Dave Varon should also be on, his landscape.
Okay, Dave, oops, you're in. And anybody else, or is that your crew?
That looks like it. Everybody's here. Yep.
Do we have Dave Aron here?
Yep, he's on there.
Oh, I see
Okay,
you,
good.
Dave. Yeah.
All right.
here.
His video was off, that's all.
Okay, all right, great. So I have to, excuse me for a minute. Kathy, you sent me the note to read into record for the opening of the public hearing. I just have to pull that up. Okay. Let's see. Sorry for the delay here. Kathy, I think you sent that to me, the ups here. No, that's not it. Do you quickly have the public hearing notice to read into record?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you want me to read it, Carrie, I can.
Oh, if you don't mind, sure, thanks.
Okay. So in accordance with the provision of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, Northborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on March 16th, 2021 at 6 p.m. to consider the special permit and/or site plan approval and/or special permit site plan approval application for 1 Lyman Street, map 66, parcels 9, 10, and 11, submitted by Cable Matters, Inc. for a 23,000 square foot office and warehouse space with on-site parking with on-site parking. Application and plans prepared by Cornerstone Engineering are on file at the town clerk's office and town planner's office and may be viewed on the planning department webpage. And then the ad goes on to say, Carrie, what basically you've already talked about, that this is a remote meeting and that the public hearing notice was published in the February 25th and March 4th editions of the Telegram and Gazette.
Okay, thank you. Great. So welcome everybody. Would someone like to introduce the team? And then I just want to sort of guide the format for the rest of the hearing to start anyway. Is there a lead on the team?
If I may, I will start off. Marshall Gould, attorney for Cable Matters, and Jeff Jang. And with me today, we have Jeff Jang, who is still in his office, as you can see. Jeff is the owner and president, CEO of Cable Matters. We also have our engineer for tonight, Vito Konya at Cornerstone Engineering. We have Dave Veron at the Veron Company he's the landscape architect on the project. And our building architect is Alok Danda, who is here with us as well tonight. So to keep this moving, I'd like to introduce Jeff to tell you a little bit about his company and just show you some of the slides of who his company is and what the products that they sell in the store.
Okay, so before we get started on that, what I want to do is there were some revised files that came in today to the board. And it's really difficult for us to get files on the day of a hearing and then be able to read them and get through them and really take a look at the things that we need to look at. At the same hand, I know it's a lot of work for you guys to get everything together and get through the boards and through committees. So I do want to give you the courtesy of a little bit of time this evening, but I do think that we'll ultimately have to continue this hearing because just to give the board enough time to review all the late materials that were submitted. And then also, why don't we reach at the end maybe we spend about 15-20 minutes presenting what you think we should hear tonight, which could very well be information about the company if you'd like to present them. And then maybe settle on at the end what is outstanding or what needs to happen next. I think that design review has additional meetings coming up and whatever else. I think there was a question also of, I just noticed on the application trying to identify that special permit. It looked like there was just a question of what that was for, either a warehouse or light manufacturing. Do we have a determination on that one?
Carrie, if I could respond, there's no question we need a special permit for a warehouse. And by the way, for tonight, I assumed that we would talk about the company and about the site plan. And I don't think we're going to get to the special permit issues tonight. But what I may do, instead of giving the whole argument about a special permit or presentation, I think what I'd like to do is explain why we don't feel that the special permit for light manufacturing or light industrial is appropriate. But if you want to continue that to another hearing, I'm perfectly okay with that. We sort of got from our team, and I apologize for this, I've had some surgery and I've been home for 3 months now. So I was not able to meet with Kathy or with Bob, but we did learn that special permits are needed because of the new zoning bylaw amendments from last summer. So the original presentation, the original application had to do with site plan. Vito prepared that. So I think if we hear tonight about the company and from Jeff, then you can continue us whenever you want. We've got at least one more meeting with design review, and I presume that this is going to continue for at least one more, perhaps more on the hearing. So whatever you need.
Okay, sure. So why don't we clear that up right now to make sure we're all on the same page with the application. Kathy, is this are we going with warehouse or light manufacturing? Oops, I can't hear you, Kathy. You're on mute.
I'm just looking for Bob's zoning determination, but given that they both needed a special permit, you know, warehousing and light manufacturing, I believe that Bob had looked at it first as a warehouse, because that's, you know, that's in fact what part of this is going to be. And then also the definition for light manufacturing talks about fabrication, processing, packaging, or assembly operations. And I think that's where probably the applicant might disagree, that they don't believe that they're light manufacturing.
Okay, but either way, doesn't that require a special permit?
They
Correct.
both, light manufacturing and warehouse, both require a special permit from the planning board.
Okay, so that's almost, well, I guess which use was approved by the variance? I guess wouldn't that be the use that comes to the planning board?
Industrial use of any kind was approved
was?
by the
Okay.
planning board
I see.
because of
Okay.
groundwater.
Okay. But the ZBA must have had something on their application that defined the use under industrial, I assume.
We described to them exactly what we do, and in 30 seconds, I'll tell you what the issue is. The issue is, will we be considered light manufacturing? The only words that might apply are packaging and hand labor. Everything that comes to this warehouse is already packaged. If a purchaser who's going to use UPS, and only 2% of their sales go out of this warehouse, most are on Amazon, directly from Amazon or an e-mobile platform, then what they do is they take some of the already packaged merchandise, and if they fit 3 or 4 or 5 in a 6x6 by, I think 6x6 box, or the boxes go as large as 16 by 16 and 20 inches high. All they would do is take off the shelf, put it in the box, and then ship it UPS or Postal Service. Almost all of the shipments are the small 6-inch packages. But if you view that as packaging, then we need the second special permit. But that also changes the amount of parking. We would like to go with the lesser parking because we don't believe that that's packaging, but that's a decision that your board will make.
Okay, so that sounds like it still has some work to it. Why don't we, and then site plan wise, has the site plan that we have, what is the most up to date? Is there one where the site plan reflects any changes in the renderings that have come, the revised renderings, or is it an old site plan?
Vito, unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were trying to speak.
I can just answer, well, I'll
Okay.
answer it just from the design review committee this morning. The design review committee is still going through the process. So, and the renderings, the architectural renderings aren't part of the site plan.
Well, I just know I listened to the last meeting and it sounded like the site plan didn't match what was being presented, so it's difficult
Yeah.
to.
So the site plans right now, the latest ones are dated 2/16.
Okay.
Actually, we had 3/20. Sorry, I just read the wrong one. We have a 3/20 date on them. And all that, and it reflects the latest renderings, basically for that entrance vestibule in the front. And then we added the site lighting in. So those plans dated 3/20, revision date.
Our
My
actual,
screen's
You know,
so small, I'm having trouble. Actually, it's 2/16.
I was gonna say, it wouldn't be March 20th. We haven't hit
No.
that yet.
No, my screen's so small here. It's 2/16/21.
Terry, it's actually February 16th and March 20th of 2020,
Yeah,
not this year.
right. So it's the 2/16/21.
And the revised date of 3/20/20 is the
Yeah.
correct date.
Yep.
okay, so
Sorry
why don't, I'm sorry, did you say something else?
No.
Okay, so why don't we give the owner a little bit of time to walk through the slides that he wants to walk through? And I'm sorry, could you tell me how to pronounce your last name?
Young?
Jang.
Jang.
Jang
Okay.
is,
Jang. Okay, so why don't we give Mr. Jang time to report, to talk a little bit about the company, and then board members, to what extent, based on what you've received to date, are you comfortable reviewing at this point? Think you need still, et cetera? Just looking for input from the board.
So what is the plan that we're supposed to be looking at? Because I did look at the 3/20/20 plan.
It's 2/16/21.
Okay, so hold on.
Okay.
They would look remarkably similar. There's very few changes on them.
You might want to just point out what the changes are in case someone's looked at the older one.
Yeah, so on the newer ones, there's a vestibule out in the front of the building facing Bartlett. And we showed the lighting locations based on the site lighting plan that was submitted. And one of the drywall configurations was updated. That's
Okay.
it. So all the parking, the building, everything else it's all the same.
Okay.
To make sure
All right,
that-
so why don't, so we actually, I think we need to get everybody looking at the right application. I think we need to get the right application filed, and I think we need, so I think the town engineer, we just got a memo today at 3:30. We don't have a memo from design review. So what I don't want to do is get too far down without all the materials needed. So why don't we let, oh, Amy, I'm sorry. Did you have a different opinion?
Okay, no, while you're adding things, there's also the 7.2 submission requirements from the Northborough Planning Board Rules and Regs. You know, we usually go through those. They write up a little talks, it's a little description that we get.
The impact, all the impact statements?
It's like, I think Kathy, I don't know if you can send them out a list. It's 7.2 submission requirements from the Northborough Planning Board for a site plan. Talks about, yeah, a little bit of traffic, public water, sewer demand. It just goes through a list of criteria and we get a little write-up. It's a summary.
Okay, so really what we're looking for is just a more complete application. And then one other thing too, I had a question about the demo permit. Kathy, did we hear anything on that, on the demo permit?
Yep, as far as the demo permit, and Mr. Gould had a conversation or an email exchange with the building inspector today. The demo permit has not been applied for yet, but the hearing was already held with the Northborough Historic District Commission. But that was a couple of years ago, and they they approved of the demolition of the site of the house and the barn. But Mr. Federico is advising that, given that a couple of years have passed, that the applicant should go, just back before the Historic District Commission, refresh them on their plans, and then, move forward with the demo permit.
And we have agreed to that.
Okay, so back for the demo permit as well.
Right.
Okay, Amy, did you have something else or that was it?
No, that was it. Kathy, can you send them a link to the submission requirements for 7.2 with the Northborough Planning Rules and Regs?
To the planning board or to the?
No, to Marshall if he doesn't have them.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Okay,
Thank you, Amy. Appreciate it.
thanks.
Okay, great. So why don't we take about the next 10 minutes or so to get through any of those slides that you wanted to talk about the company. Then we'll wrap with whatever we need. We'll obviously have to continue because I think we need a complete application here and give the board time to review the materials. And then pick a date and time to reconvene when we have everything to look at. So
Okay.
did you want to present anything, Mr. Jang?
Yes, may I share my screen, please?
Please, yep. I do see a little button that says share screen in green at the bottom.
Okay, Cable Matters was incorporated in Massachusetts in 2009. I'm the founder. My name is Jeff Jiang. And since its inception, we focus on the connectivity products ranging from cables, adapters, docking stations to networking products. And we currently have 8 employees, including myself. 4 of us have the master's degree, and we have 1 product manager, 1 marketing manager, 2 inventory specialists who mainly handle the purchase order and handle the inventory matters with Amazon. And then 1 business sales, 1 technical writer, and 1 customer support. And so that's the whole team for now. And we do expect to grow in the next 5-10 years, but we expect the maximum employee headcount would be kept at the 20 by 2030. That's 10 years from now. And Cable Matters does not manufacture or package our products in the current location or in the warehouse. And we do not plan to do any manufacturing or package our products in the future. We sell our products worldwide in many countries, including US, Canada, several countries in Europe and Japan. The organization can range from tech, education to all sorts of industries. I'm going to show you what the product looks like. Those products are really some of those like used by everyone for their smartphone, charging, connecting the cables to your monitor, connect cables to your network. So it's, you know, that's the cables. Then we also have another type of products to converting 1 signal to the other. So those are hubs, or we call the adapters. So you have all kinds of ports in your computer, then you might have different ports on the other side of the device. So then you use this to convert your connection. Then we have a well-integrated docking station. So basically this facilitate connection to all the peripherals. So, you know, when one arrives in the office, they can just plug in 1 cable and then all the peripherals are connected. And so that's called their docking stations. So this is how our products are packed. Okay, so there's one, you know, it's really packed in the paper box. We took this product out of the box just to show you what what the product looks like. But you look at this. This is sealed, so they all come in packaged. Okay, so we don't, you know, again, we don't package the product per se in the warehouse at all. And then there's some products packaged in polypropylene bag, and then, you know, like 50 to 100 those bags will be placed in a big carton, and then, you know, we can ship them out through the UPS or USPS. So that's another example for the polypropylene bag. So in the warehouse, we you know, have we call the shelved space to for the customer support engineer to easy pick and pack and ship the order to our customers. So there's another part of the warehouse. So it's the loose carton, or in some cases the pelletized storage. So we use the power stack. We don't have the big drivable lift, forklift. So we use the this is the menu one. So 1 person walks behind it, and this can get to the tallest like this 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I don't think we can get it to the fourth one. We can only get to here. Then the fourth one, we're using this ladder to, you know, put them to the top of the shelf. So we have on-site kitchenware for the for folks, and we have you know, conference room, and this shows the site which we are looking to build our building. The reason we wanted to move or to build the 20,000 square feet warehouse and office is that we currently really maximum out our storage space and also office space. The office space is really used for bigger testing room and the conference room, kitchen, and then employees' office or cubicles. Yeah, we have to test our products extensively using many TVs, computers, equipment. So we have a relatively large room for testing purpose. And the so that's the picture showing the one Lyman Street, the current building on 1 Lyman Street. And so this is the brief overview for the business. One thing I wanted to talk about is the fulfillment or the traffic concern we saw from the labels of, you know. So currently we have one delivery and pickup by US Post Office, and then one delivery and pickup by UPS daily. Then certainly there's some, you know, orders may come through different carrier by, you know, the supply company, but that's very minimal. It's random. It's not a daily occurring delivery or traffic. Then we have one big trailer delivery once every 2 months. That deal is for the container which comes from either China or Thailand. That's where our suppliers are located. And so, but we do think with the business growth, we could see that once every month. But that's pretty much the traffic load for the big trailer. Then we might have the occasionally the truck delivery for supplies or Amazon returned goods. So our business are mainly Amazon business. 98% of business are done through Amazon. So we send the container loads of goods directly to Amazon warehouses, and we only fulfill 2 to 3% of orders in our Southborough warehouse. Those are the orders from our business customers or from our own websites or eBay. So those are the small percentage of the sales. Okay, I think that's it.
Great, thank you. That was really helpful. I appreciate you walking through that. So why don't we figure out what we need to take us to the next step and plan a day to come back and review that together. So Michelle, when is the next design review meeting?
We're meeting with this applicant on March 30th.
Okay.
We've made, just to let the board know, give you an update, with regards to site plan approval, the site design. No one on design review had an issue with it. I think we're all in consensus that what was presented to us, we all liked it and agreed with it. Same with the lighting, same with the signage. I think where we're doing right now and working on right now in trying to be responsive to the residents who are, you know, this abuts a residential neighborhood. There is a street that separates from the residential neighborhood, which is Lyman Street. And then there's this property, but we're trying to make that transition from an architectural standpoint from residential to industrial. And so how do you make do you make your house look like, your building look like a house? Or how much different architectural techniques do you add to it to soften it, to make that transition happen? Regardless of wherever you are in town, if your residential buffers another, like commercial or a highway or industrial, you're going to have to make that transition. So I think the applicant's been very good coming back with some different recommendations and getting feedback from the board. And I think we're going to meet again on the 30th and try to implement some of those changes. The other thing is we've done a lot of extensive work. I know Dave Veron could probably spend a minute with you telling you about some of the landscaping to help sort of, as I talk about, making that soften that transition from residential into industrial. And that's our goal, to try to do that through the architectural of the building as well as the landscape.
And then did the design review committee get a chance to see there was a memo sent or a letter sent from the abutters that had several concerns about the site renderings and questions and things like that? Did the committee receive that PDF or?
So we received an email this morning, 15 minutes before we started. Kathy was able to respond to one of the butters extensively with a lot of their questions. Kathy, if you want to speak to that, there was one direct abutter who had quite a bit of questions that Kathy was able to reply to. And then there was another letter that, I mean, just like you guys are today, right? You feel like you didn't get everything early enough to review it. And we received that 15 minutes before the meeting.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't expect that you'd come back with a report on it. I just want to make sure that everyone had it on the committee. Okay, so it sounds like
I also wanted the board to understand that there's nothing that we feel can't be worked out with the design review. It's how do you make that transition, whether it's the Lyman Street, Bartlett Street transition, whether it's over on Whitney Street, whether it's over on any of these industrial areas in town. How do you make that transition from residential to industrial to appease both sides of, to appease the applicant, but also to work with the residents? And we're working very hard on that to make sure that works. And Jeff and his company has been Vito and everyone else has been very cooperative and worked alongside of us. And hopefully in the end, you'll get a product that you'll like.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that update. So it sounds like that's going back to design review. So we'll have some changes eventually to look at there. Use-wise, Kathy, is that something you'll be working on with Bob to settle on what that final use is? Because I think that the site plan will need a definitive use assigned to it.
Do you mean warehouse versus light industrial or a combination of both? Yeah,
Well,
I think between myself and, the applicant will verify that with the building inspector.
Okay, so we have the question of use, then just complying with the rules and regs, just in terms of the submission with the special permit. And then we have, it looks like does this go back to conservation at all, or no meeting with conservation?
We will have to go before conservation. That hasn't been filed yet.
Okay, do you have any sense of timing or no?
Not yet. They did confirm the wetland line several years back. And they looked at the previous project, but we kind of wanted to come here first and get a sense of the planning board first.
Okay, well, like I said, I mean, we just received a lot of materials today, so it's really difficult for us to do our job without having, we work during the day and things like that. So we do need the benefit of time, but it's for advance filings before hearing. So I wanted to at least give you the courtesy of introducing yourselves and telling a little bit about it, but I think the board will require time to look at that. And it sounds like we have some outstanding items anyway. So why don't we pick a time to come back for, unless the board has any, I'm sorry, I don't mean to leave the board out from any additional quick questions or comments. No, Amy, did you have something? No, Molly? Nothing? Okay. Okay, so looking at, I think realistically, Michelle, you said you're on the 30th. I think the soonest we'd be looking at is the 2nd April hearing. 20th. Is that right, Kathy? Are we the 6th and the 20th in April?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yep, and this, on the 6th right now, you've got the public hearing for the proposed zoning amendments. And you've got 425 Whitney scheduled to come back on that night. So to schedule it on the 20th, it could be first on the agenda at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Does that work for the applicant, the April 20th at 6 p.m.?
Yes, we'll make it work.
Okay, thanks. Board members, good? Okay, is there a motion to continue to April 20th at, and I recognize actually before we make that motion, I recognize this is a public hearing and we can take public comments, but since we're continuing, the public will have the opportunity to make comments at our next hearing. I don't want to go too far down because we haven't reviewed a whole lot in order for people to be able to comment. So I am cognizant of public comments and they will certainly be accepted as we dive down into the plan and get a chance to take a look. So why don't we, is there a motion to continue to April 20th at 6 p.m.?
I make a motion to continue the application for 1 Lyman Street to April 20th at 6 p.m.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, first and seconded, all in favor, Millie,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and carries an aye. Okay, great. Thanks very much. We'll see you back on April 20th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.
You.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is actually, I'm going to move to the continued public hearing for the common driveway application for 85 and 95 West Street. So I will bring over, I think we have Brian, oops, David, looks like you're stuck there. I don't know, we got him. Okay, so we have Brian Waterman for that. Michelle, are you recusing yourself?
Yes, Kathy and Carrie, I'm recusing myself. Now that
Okay.
you've moved everything up, I was looking
Okay.
at figuring they were after the subdivision, so I'll sign off.
Okay. For the purpose of the minutes, Michelle Gillespie has recused herself from the next hearing. So Brian, can you hear us okay?
Yep, can you hear me now?
Yep. Do you have anyone else on your team with you?
I believe Attorney Kablack was going to join us.
Let's see.
Did we skip a meeting? Is that why? So,
Yeah, because I think you are going to be much quicker. So we just, oops, there's a, hold on. I think we still have, the Gould and Edinburgh is not your,
no, Mark Kablack.
okay. Let's see, would it be a phone number by any chance? Or one with a 212 last 3 numbers?
Oh, he might have been doing through the YouTube one. I'm not sure.
Let's see, well, I don't see him here. I see a.
All right, I can start if you'd want. That's fine.
Okay, so what I'll say is probably a similar message to what just came across to Lyman is that the planning board received a lot of memos today, the day of the hearing, and it's really difficult for us. I understand it's been probably a challenge for you two to get through the boards and committees and to navigate all of that, but at the same time, it's really hard for us to get everything at the last minute and also navigate, but I wanna give you maybe the opportunity for the next 15 or 20 minutes to present what you think you need to, is important to talk about today and maybe direct us to the finals. I think there's a lot of and comments and back and forth. So I just want to make sure the board knows which path to follow because I know it's certainly tough to follow through. And if you hear from the attorney that you've invited, but I'm more than happy to bring him over. I just don't see somebody by that name.
Okay.
Mark, is that critical to your presentation?
No, he's been involved with I might as well jump into this part, uh, the covenant document, which was the easements, the maintenance agreements and things. That a draft was sent out in January that was reviewed by town council recently. Town council had a couple of comments on the document, which Attorney Kablack instituted, and we issued a kind of a final of that last week. Obviously, it can't be final until, names are decided and it's, signed, but the document was agreed to between town council and the applicant's attorney. So Fred and Kathy have a copy of that, the document that was agreed to. I think, Carrie, you might have been copied on that as well.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so why don't we spend maybe the next 15, 20 minutes, at least giving you the chance to kind of outline what you want the board to look at this evening, and then maybe we settle on what we need to look at next, just so we can hash out all of the revisions, what we're waiting for. I think, Fred, you did not have the chance to comment at this point, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, so obviously we'll need to continue. We'll need to hear from Fred and all of that. So
Correct, yeah.
again, just to give you the benefit of sharing what you want to the next 15 or 20 minutes. Or so.
Sure, I'll try to keep it quick. Yeah, we actually had a meeting last Tuesday with Fred and Mia McDonald to go through the comment letters. There was also an abutter hired his own engineer to do a review. We received comments that Fred forwarded to us last on the 8th. And unfortunately, our engineer was away for the week with family. So we were just able to respond to that. The final response went out this morning. But I think from our initial meeting with you guys, one of the big questions for the site was managing stormwater, and also the water line and hydrants, to work that out with DPW and fire. Those things were addressed. The DPW and Fred and the fire department asked to extend the water line actually past the common drive and terminate it with a hydrant at the Cherry Street intersection. So that's been addressed. There were also, they wanted water booster stations for each home. So that's been added to the plan. So I think we've addressed, some of the plan of metrics as far as that goes. We had done the additional soils testing, both soil composition and permeability tests for the underground stormwater. They had a few comments that, Fred had some comments on that as well as Mia, but mainly, oh, there's an alarm going off in the background here. Mainly the abutters engineer had raised questions on some clarity issues as far as what the existing ground elevations were where we did the testing. Can you hold 1 second? I'm going to kill this thing.
Sounds like the ice cream truck.
It does.
Sorry, if it's not my dog barking, it's that thing.
That's okay. Did you say Mark Kablack was your attorney?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
he's here. I'll bring him in. Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. There you go. Oops. There he is. Okay. Welcome, Mark. We were waiting for you.
Hi, Mark. We jumped a meeting, so I'm doing a quick synopsis here.
Okay, go right ahead.
So again, the peer reviewer for the abutter, again, that's, hired from the abutter to look at things on their end, but a lot of it was clarity issues on how we determined the depths to groundwater, if we were meeting the DEP 2-foot separation of groundwater. We had field staked out the the testing location. So we were able to update that with the actual, not interpolated, but actual ground elevations for the existing ground, and then subsequently update the plans to show that we're meeting the DEP 2-foot offset to stormwater. We're actually meeting or exceeding what they have for a 4 to 9 lot development. So we issued that response letter today, along with the revised and updated plans, the updated Hydrocad and stormwater management report, as well as the operation and maintenance plan. So Fred obviously hasn't had a chance to review all the detail on that, but we're confident that addresses all the major questions for the project. Both kill two birds. It'll cover for the planning board and the conservation commission. We were supposed to have the conservation commission meeting last night, but again, we didn't have a chance to address all the things with our engineer just getting back Sunday night. So we continued the conservation commission meeting to April 15th. So I think the plan set, the plan set you have, which I know they requested for us to drop off 7 full-size copies tomorrow, which we will do that tomorrow. So the planning board has 7 full sets of the revised and updated plans. So those will be delivered tomorrow. And also 1 full copy of the stormwater management.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, I personally don't need you to copy a large document, so don't.
Yeah, it's like 140 pages, so we'll drop off 1 full-size one for you. If you need to, read it and fall asleep at night, that probably work. So I think we've addressed all the town comments received from DPW, fire, Fred's initial letter. Again, everything really was falling back to coming up on the stormwater, making sure we're as in full compliance as we can be, and we are. We've addressed the plans to make it very clear on those elevations that were requested by the abutters peer reviewer, as well as Fred. So I think we're very confident that we've addressed all the comments. And again, the document, the easement and covenant document, has been addressed through town council and Mr. Cablick. So.
Okay, so just to confirm then, I'm gonna go backwards to make sure that I have the right things. So there is the stormwater report that came today. That's the 2:30 updated stormwater report.
Yep. And the operation and maintenance plan is included in that if, people are looking for it.
Okay, so for the board members, that came today. That's the 3 o'clock one. Then we have around that same time, actually, there's a revision to the driveway, revision D3. I'm sorry, revision D. That's the most up-to-date common driveway.
Correct. Yep, you should have the full plan set as a PDF.
Yeah. Okay.
And we'll drop off 7 full-size copies tomorrow.
Okay. And then there's the Hydrocad report, which Fred, that came today, but I think that's something Fred looks at. And then response to comments to Fred, that came today. That was from March 16th. That's today, actually. So that we have the comments to Fred. That's today as well.
Correct.
Okay. And Fred, on your side, your pending is responding to that letter, reading the reports and whatnot.
Yes, I want to go through the revised stormwater report and the hydrology report, along with any changes that were made to the plan, and make sure that they match. And it just not having a paper copy today, it was a little difficult, on top of the fact that it's 146 pages, but we're mostly looking at the summary and then checking the facts around the determination of the separation of groundwater. I think that was the most outstanding item previously. Brian did submit revised plans at the end of February. the applicants, the abutters engineer had requested any information that was submitted. He got a copy of those. He did a review and sent a memo. When I looked at that, I had the same questions, gave them to Brian, and therefore there was no response from me on Brian's submittal back in February. And yesterday he indicated he was going to get it to me today. Unfortunately, with everything else going on today, it wasn't time to do it. So that's where we're at on my
Okay.
end, and hopefully you have a full report next time.
Okay, and declaration of restrictions, that the last one I have on file is from the March 12th email. Is that the latest, or it sounds like it was revised again?
No, I believe that's the latest.
Okay,
Yes, that should be the latest, Madam Chairwoman. That is inclusive of the town attorney's comments.
okay, so that's the latest from that. Okay, does anyone on the board have any quick questions or clarifications on the documents that we're looking at? I know we had a lot on file today buzzing around. Okay. Okay, so let's see, what do you have any questions in terms of what you need at all, or is this, I know this has been a long process for you, so.
Well, I've been asked to see if you guys would do a straw poll on your feelings or support for the project.
Well, honestly, I mean, I feel like I have to get a handle on all these materials before I can even kind of,
Yep.
Fully weigh in. I understand the wanting to do that. It's so hard because we get so many different memos and you just don't know
I know.
without looking at them. But, certainly I personally feel like you're, sending the right things over and clarifying and answering questions and all of that. So in terms of just providing the right things, I feel like we're on a good path. I don't know if any board members have a comment at all, or.
I would agree with that, Carrie.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we motion to continue? I think we're going to run up into the same timing jam, and plus it sounds like you still have something on April 15th anyway. So I think April 16th would be our best bet to regroup.
April 16th,
Yeah, I'm sorry, not April 16th. I'm sorry, April 20th.
April 20th.
Yep. Does that make sense? Yes, the first one is April 6th, the second one's the 20th. So it'd be April 20th at 6 p.m. Does that work for you?
At 6 p.m., yeah. Yeah, I guess one question is, typically conservation commissions want all other permits or decisions made before they issue an order, because those are typically governing the construction. I know in the past, I think you wanted conservation's determination before you closed. Is that still the same? Am I on course there, or?
I think from my perspective, and other board members can speak, I'm just interested when they have conditions that are relevant to our decision. So I personally am not, I just want to understand if they've requested things that they want us to look for. And so that's usually what I look for. I don't know if board members feel differently or.
I mean, with this filing, as far as Conservation Commission, really only about the first 400 feet of the common drive, some of the lower end of the stormwater, and the single family driveway on lot 1B are within jurisdictional areas within the buffer zone. But again, as I was pointing out, all the things we're doing drainage wise and meeting for the town kind of go hand in hand between this project between the two boards. The covenant and easement document is going to be recorded with the order of conditions and put in people's deeds. So I think that satisfies both boards as far as knowing that that's covered. And I know it's something that Fred and the commission both are looking for. So
Speaking of timing, we won't meet again until the day after you go to conservation.
We're on the 15th, so 5 days. So
for 5 days
we'll have a closing with the commission on the 15th, and we can at least present that to you that they've agreed to close and issue an order of conditions.
Great. Aim.
Oh, I guess just one condition I noticed mentioned at the conservation, it could be in the covenant. It was just a comment that the common drive be constructed 100% prior to certificate of occupancy for any of the houses. And that's something we talked about with subdivisions that we used to do. That's just one thing I heard at the conservation. And is that in the covenant or in any of the documents?
That the common drive be 100% complete before.
Certificate of occupancy for any of the houses.
Yeah, I think.
I could speak to that, Brian.
Sure.
Currently, that standard is not in the covenant. We would prefer to address issues related to the Conservation Commission and stability of stormwater structures and the driveway itself, that we get to a level of what are referred to as base course improvements with functioning stormwater systems. Because what we don't want to do, and I think this would apply in any subdivision, what we wouldn't want to do is complete final pavement on a roadway where we're still constructing other lots within the development, because it just tears up the road and people come in with moving trucks and so on. So if we could come up with a standard short of full completion to some level of base level standard, that would be acceptable.
I'm sure Fred has input on that. I know we've done it in the past, but it was so long ago.
We'll work out, some suggested language for the board to include in their decision. Because there's, while I understand, the applicant would prefer that language, but we've run into problems with other common driveways where we have hooked everything on the final occupancy permit, but yet that final lot may be years away from being completed. And so what ends up happening is the base coat deteriorates, and we find ourselves in a situation that we are in on a couple common driveways now. So we've talked about that in-house, separate from this common driveway application, that we need to come up with sort of a standard condition that's going to work for the town as well as the applicant. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was if the planning board, it's always this catch-22 between, who goes first or who's last between the Conservation Commission and the planning board. But if the planning board, closed out, made the decision, closed out the hearing, while the Conservation Commission was still reviewing the plan, and then the Conservation Commission issued an order of conditions that required the developer or the applicant to revise his plans, that's very easy. That's all part of the process. They would have to, come back to the planning board. It could be something as simple as that could be done in-house. That's often done amongst the staff members, where it's a minor change and it's not anything that has to come back before a board and require another public hearing. Or, it may be significant enough where the applicant does have to revise the special permit application and, open up back, the hearing. But that's on them. That's the risk that they take.
Yeah, my sense is, Kathy, that we'll have a understanding by the time we come back to you on the 20th as to whether or not we need to continue because conservation isn't far enough along, or whether we feel comfortable enough, assuming everything else on the planning board side is in order, closing the hearing at that time.
Yeah, I just feel there's just been circumstances where I'll happen to watch conservation after the fact, or Amy, I think you've mentioned this before at meetings too, where they wish that they didn't explicitly say we wish the planning board didn't close, but it was just they had something that could have been useful to us that would have been nice to include if we just knew about it. So just from that perspective, more than anything else.
Even that condition that I just read out loud came from conservation, and that triggered, oh yeah, we could do that. You know, we used to do those conditions.
I think the conservation sometimes feels kind of stuck when an applicant goes to the planning board first and gets approval and then comes to the Conservation Commission and asks for waivers from their regulations. And then they feel like if they don't grant it, then the project can't go forward and they're made to, feel bad. So they want the applicant to work with both boards, but not always ask the Conservation Commission to waive their regulations. In this case, I don't think there's any waivers that are being forced upon the Conservation Commission due to the planning board's role in the process. And me and I are working together to make sure that the drainage system is approved the same for both boards, and that it really shouldn't matter which one closes first. The main issues are the same and will be dealt with the same way.
Agreed. Yeah, they kind of go hand in hand on this one.
Okay, that's helpful to know. Okay, so do we have, again, the same message that I gave at the earlier hearing. I realize this is a public hearing, but we do plan to continue. I'm cognizant of public comments and think that we'll be in a better spot to take them when we can look a little closely at some additional information and plans, and we'll certainly open up public comments at that time. So with that, is there a motion to continue to April 20th at 6 p.m.?
I make a motion to continue 85 West to April 20th at 6 p.m.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to continue the common driveway application for 85 and 95 West Street to April 20th at 6 p.m. And we have all in favor, Millie,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Carrie's an aye. So we will see you back in April.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much.
Good night. Bye.
Good night.
Okay, so why don't we shift gears now? We will move along to the continued public hearing for the definitive subdivision application for 0 Bartlett Street. So why don't we bring everybody in for that? Let's see. Oh, Jim must be bringing people in for me here. I think. Okay, so we have Mark Donovan. Let's see, we have David Robinson and Scott Weiss. Okay, is that it?
I believe so.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's see, why don't we, I just need a minute to shift over all my paperwork here. So we can get started. So I wanted to, as we get kicked off here, it's been a little bit since we met. I think our last meeting was on February 16th. So it's been about a month since we last met. What I wanted to do is just at least make sure that, oops, hold on a second here. Technical issue. I wanted to make sure that everybody has had a chance. We received a couple of memos since then. There's been a conversation with council since we last met. So I just wanted to quickly take 5 minutes or so just to recap on what we have or what's transpired since we last met on the 16th. So just moving backwards, we met on the 16th. We had talked about some of the outstanding items. When we went through the rules and regs, we looked at outstanding items being the Conservation Commission, the 8M permit, just talked about some inconsistencies with the impact statement. The applicant had asked about clarifying on the rules and regs with council, just to make sure that the board was within our authority. So that transpired on the 16th. We received a memo from the applicant on the 25th of February that indicated that they did not feel they had to comply with submitting the Concom filing, and also for the 8M. We received another memo on the 25th. It was a memo from Attorney Lyman, who represents one of the abutters who had cited some ownership case law and had contested that whether or not the applicant had ownership of the land reflected in the subdivision plan. He had claimed that the application was deficient and should be rejected because not all owners of the proposed parcel way were co-applicants, which he felt violated the rules and regs. He had also questioned why the plan omitted one of the lots, map 51 lot 1, owned by the Commonwealth, when he had felt that the plan plainly includes the MWRA land, which the plan, in his estimation, showed parcel H way beginning at Bartlett, crossing the aqueduct over state-owned land and proceeding to the cul-de-sac. We received a memo on March 2nd with a request to continue so that the applicant could gather information requested by the board and evaluate the letter from Attorney Timon. On the same day, the 2nd, the planning board acknowledged the request to continue and just asked Attorney Donahue to briefly attend the hearing to just talk about what information we needed to move the process forward. So we just gave a quick recap of the meeting with town council and some things that are expected to prove ownership. On the 2nd, we got I'm going to refer to them by pages because there are a couple of different memos from Attorney Donahue. There was a 42-page memo that came in on the 2nd, or is dated the 2nd, from Attorney Donahue, that did not agree with the case law presented by Attorney Timon and did not agree with the ownership argument. On the 10th, we got another memo from Attorney Donahue. This was a 36-page one that was very similar. Michelle, are you having trouble, Michelle? No, okay. That memo did also, I think, further contested the cases that were cited in the memo by Attorney Timon. Had thought that the previous ADM was adequate and MWRA granted the express authority to take all necessary action to implement the driveway. We received another memo on the 11th from Attorney Donahue. That was with the overlay that showed us the original 0 Bartlett filing with the red overlay of the subdivision. And again, reiterating that there was not a need for the Concom filing and that could be in the Concom and ADM could be provided after the fact. On the 11th, we got a memo from Conservation Commission Chair. I actually have some questions about this one, so I'm going to jump back to it later. I just want to acknowledge what we've received. On the 15th, we received a memo from Attorney Donahue that he still stands by the previous memos, but would also like to request a waiver on ownership. The rules and requirements mandating ownership. Just quickly because I don't want to spend this hearing, arguing back and forth on case law, I just want to acknowledge the 3 cases that were cited, although each side did not agree with how each side interpreted it differently. I would want to acknowledge the 3 cases cited were Batchelder versus the Planning Board of Yarmouth, the Kuklinska versus the Planning Board of Wakefield, and Conway versus the Westford Planning Board. Each side obviously interpreted the rulings differently. And I think that overall, just conceptually, what the cases covered were if the planning board regulation required the applicant for definitive plan approval be an owner of record is a reasonable regulation. Whether the planning board has number 2, whether the planning board has authority to waive compliance with its regulations requiring the record of owner be the applicant for approval of a subdivision plan. And then 3, whether it stands to reason that one can interpret owner as including someone who holds only an easement in affected land. Obviously, Attorney Timon felt one way, Attorney Donahue felt another way. We don't have to spend our night going back and forth on that. I just wanted to acknowledge that those are the different cases and the different stands on them. Also, I need to update the board. I did have a meeting with town council to talk about our subdivision rules and regs, as we briefly mentioned last time. And I just wanted to update the board on what that meeting consisted of. So, and Kathy and Fred were also attending. So what Attorney Dineski and I, and Kathy and Fred as well, talked about was really questions around the rules and regulations, just making sure that the board's acting within our rights. And we looked at a couple of different areas. Number one, as I mentioned, we looked at the Conservation Commission role and requirement. And Attorney Dineski did express that, you know, as a single item, it's not something that, although it's not necessarily in conflict with state subdivision laws, that it hasn't really been, it isn't something that on its own would be something that you would necessarily demand or not approve of a subdivision because it was not sent in. So that was his feeling on the Conservation Commission rules and regulation. So I think that that was certainly a point that Attorney Donahue was alluding to, that that I think Attorney Dineski seemed to think the same, that it wasn't alone, it's not anything that would cause a denial. The other thing that we looked at was looking at the ownership component. And so just in terms of looking at the definition of an applicant and definition of an owner, in our rules and regs, the applicant is defined as an owner of all land included. An owner is defined as the owner of record as shown by the records in the Worcester County Registry of Deeds. We looked at the plan. Let's see, and I'm going to pull that up to show what we were looking at. Okay. I'm either sharing, do you see the plan right here with the roadway? I think I'm sharing the right thing. Yep. Okay, so we looked at the plan a little closer and we talked about some of the things that we were questioning at the hearing, and questioning ownership and questioning how that weighs into our consideration. What Attorney Dineski, I wrote a few notes down just to share with the board so that everybody's aware, and also the applicant as well. That he felt overall it was a fair question to ask, that the applicant would provide something that at least acknowledges that the land, that MWA land is shown in the subdivision application, and that it's okay with them. Just to show some form of consent that the MWA's property is shown in the subdivision plan. That it would be fair to have that information so that we know that the subdivision may proceed with this land, with the land shown on it, and as it's shown on it, the subdivision road is going through the property, and there should be a basis for the planning board to know that there is acknowledgement, whether conditional or contingent, there's some sort of conditional or contingent assent to that. We also talked about, let's see, you know, whether or not, and I think I mentioned this last time when we met, whether or not that whatever form that comes in, that we understand that this subdivision, that we have some sort of proof or acknowledgement that this subdivision application has been submitted, and that MWA understands their property shown on it, they have no objection, you know, and that it was the applicant's burden to show that they're in compliance. And since the deed was provided from the 1800s, that there's some sort of contemporaneous evidence that the property owner is aware of what's going on, and that would be reasonable for us to ask. Certainly that somewhat relates to the 8M permit, so makes the 8M permit a little bit of a different case in terms of where I just mentioned the Concom piece of it, maybe a little bit different. The 8M is a little bit more implicated in this, in that we're just really looking for some sort of acknowledgement. So I think that was the primary message from council, and just really had noted that would not be in excess of the board's authority to request some sort of proof of or acknowledgement or any sort of current day recognition. I think that in terms of updates, I think that was it. We also, we received a letter from a resident that I also asked council about. It was a request, someone had, a resident at the last hearing had called in and had mentioned a question about a conflict of interest. They've submitted an email to the planning board that had asked us to investigate. They'd questioned if there was a conflict of interest with Attorney Donahue and his participation in the master plan committee. And that is something that Kathy has forwarded on, I think, to the town administrator, which goes to the Board of Selectmen. That's not in our purview to investigate. So that's something that we won't discuss as part of the application, but that was the other component that we had talked about. So with that, that is the, I think that brings us up to date to now. What I think for tonight, if there's any additional questions by the board or any additional information that the applicant wants to present, I think that we can do that. If there's nothing else to present, I think we'll need to decide next steps. So I'd like to start by asking the applicant if there's anything else you wanted that we had that hasn't been sent or reflected in any memos or whatnot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Donahue on behalf of the applicant. Just as part of the description of what's occurred since our last hearing, you mentioned the memorandum from the Conservation Commission, but said you were going to come back to it. Do you want to touch on that first?
Yes, I did. Thank you. So conservation, we did receive a memo, so I did want to recognize that. Why don't we pull it up? Did everybody see the memo from the Conservation Commission chair?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, great. Let me pull that up. So we did receive a memo from the Conservation Commission chair. Or should I now have? I'm sorry, I was organized and then I pulled up a whole bunch of files in the interim. Does somebody have that handy? Oh, I think I'm reaching my, hold on a second here. All right. Sorry, everyone. I'm just gonna have to pull it up from scratch again. I had too many files open. It's taking a long time. All right. Kathy, do you recall what day that, no, I just actually said what day, the 15th,
March 11th.
the
Yeah.
11th?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want me to just read it, Carrie, for the public record?
Sure, I'd love to pull it up. I wonder, I'm sorry about this. I have so many files from all the hearings tonight. Sure, if you don't mind.
Also, I just found it if you want me to pull it up too.
Oh, sure. Do you mind doing that, Amy?
Yeah, and Kathy can read it, but I'll just share it.
Well, I don't think I have to read it if you're gonna put it on the screen.
Okay. Let's see. Of course, now. All right, let me see. I swear I just opened it. Sorry, I did just open it and it's not showing on when I go to share screen. You know why? Because I think it opened in a browser. So now I'm at the same point.
All right, so Kathy, if you don't mind sharing it.
Sorry.
So it's dated March 11th. It's a memo from Greg Young, the Conservation Commission Chairman, to Carrie Martinek as the Chairman of the Planning Board regarding DEP file 247-1176, which is the 0/301 Bartlett Street project order of conditions. The Conservation Commission received a request from the 0/301 Bartlett Street Project H project applicant's representative to clarify the commission's requirements for orders of conditions. The Conservation Commission and the Mass DEP strongly prefer not to have two. Oh, you've got it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to break your stride.
That's okay.
Yep. Okay. So here everybody can see it. So in this case, my question was, so this came from Greg, but the applicant did not go before the Conservation Commission, correct?
That's correct. I reached out to the Conservation Commission agent.
Okay. So the commission itself has never looked at this application.
It depends on what you mean by this application. The commission has issued an order of conditions for essentially the work that's included in the definitive subdivision, plus the 150,000 square foot building, plus the parking and access roads. That's been before the commission. It has voted an order of conditions for that. That's the purpose of the letter I provided with the overlay plan.
Okay. So they looked at the subdivision plan. It's just, I never saw, so I just went back to look at these meetings and they just never discussed it. It was never on the agenda. So I'm just trying to figure out, did the Conservation Commission look at it and decide that it was okay? Or is this just Mia and Greg separately? Which is fine either way. I'm just trying to clarify the genesis of this memo.
I certainly can't speak to the genesis from my discussions with the Conservation Commission agent. To clarify again, the land and is cited in the memorandum is subject to an approved order of conditions for work. As we have described previously, that work far exceeds the work proposed in the buffer zone from this definitive subdivision plan. And so they have seen the land, they have seen the type of work to be done. And I think the memorandum is clear that the strong preference of both the local commission and DEP is that there be only one open order of conditions with regard to property for any development at any one time.
Okay. Okay. Any board?
Carrie, what's stated in this memo? You know, I mean, if you have, well, I mean, there's nobody here from the Conservation Commission, but you know, Fred might be able to shed a little bit more light if you're asking about what the process is. But this memo really is for any project. You know, it's not. I mean, this is the process that the Conservation Commission goes through in accordance with Mass DEP.
Okay, that's fine. I guess I wasn't sure if to some extent the Conservation Commission would have the option to decide that that's also their preference. I mean, in the one case, the one concern that I had was that we have the phase 1 study that has the REC on the site, and there's really been nobody who has, I mean, obviously we had the applicant's expert come last time, but in the end, he ended up confirming that there is still an REC on the site, and we just haven't heard from anybody of what that means from our perspective. And I didn't know if Conservation Commission also got a chance to look at that study or anything related to the application. It sounds like no, they didn't. This is just a general policy preference.
If I might, just to correct the record, the report provided by Sanborn Head and the information provided to the commission by the representative of Sanborn Head did not refer to RECs on the property. It referred to RECs in the area of the property on other property of other owners where there had been a release and there was a responsible party undertaking a cleanup.
Um, You kept calling it the subject site, so I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Amy.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I did go back too, because I watch conservation meetings. I didn't watch December. I went back and read the minutes, but I did watch last night. And the Bartlett Street subdivision never came up with the board. So I don't know if that's what you were just saying is, it looks like maybe the Conservation Commission staff had a discussion, but as far as the whole board, there was no discussion. And I did email Mia about the Sanborn and to see if she read it and had any comments, but I never heard back.
Okay.
So Matt, maybe we should have Fred weigh in on this like Kathy suggested.
Oh, sure.
Sure. I believe what the chairman and the conservation agent were basically saying is that if the applicant was to submit the subdivision, in order to get an order of conditions for that, he would have to get a certificate of compliance and close out the previous order, or amend it so that that order of conditions labeled in the letter 247-1176 was for the subdivision. And the applicant has not done that yet, and I believe indicated he wishes not to do that at this time, which is his prerogative. But the commission is just relaying their policy is not to have two orders on one piece of property open at the same time, which is consistent with what the DEP policy is. So they're trying to be consistent as much as they can to help you with what you're trying to accomplish with having them meet that regulation that's in the subdivision regulations, the requirement.
Okay. Okay. Any questions about that? So it sounds like this is a matter of their general policy to not have two orders of conditions. But this never necessarily, like the application for the subdivision didn't necessarily go to the Conservation Commission. It sounds like.
It doesn't appear as though it went to the full commission. It is their policy. It's not something that they need to vote on as a commission. It's their policy for procedure. It's also triggered by the DEP because unlike the planning board, the DEP actually gets a copy of the application, reviews it, and also issues that order, that DEP file number prior to the Conservation Commission holding their public hearing. Their policy would be not to issue another order of, or not to have another file number associated with the same property. And their recommendation, I think, would be the same thing, is that either close one out or amend it so that it's for the application of the subdivision rather than the site plan.
Okay. So that's fine. I just wanted to clarify that. And I think that lines up with what I thought. I just wanted to at least bring that up and make sure that I understood that properly. Okay, so it sounds like there are no other questions on that. Okay, so let's see here. Did we get, so we didn't get any comments at all on the phase 1 study, correct? There were no staff comments on that one? I think at one time we talked about that the staff looks at the executive summary, and I don't believe we got comments, but did anyone want to comment on that at all, or pull that up?
That the study. So I think when you were, Carrie, your reference to the REC on the subject site, it does refer to, it is, I don't know what page it is on the summary, but it does have a statement that it says it is Sanborn Head's opinion that this upgradient release constitutes a wreck to the subject site.
Okay.
But
That's
not,
what okay, so conservation is at least, are they made aware of this, or are they?
it's right there in the last sentence of that large top paragraph.
Oh, yeah, no, I see that. I'm
Okay.
just wondering, like, so I understand they're not looking at this, but are they, if they're not looking at this application, is conservation aware of this component of the application or looking at it, or?
No, this is not before the Conservation Commission.
Okay. All right. I think that answers my question.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so that was my one component on that. And then let's see. Was there anything else that you wanted to add or talk about, or there's no 8M permit or any sort of additional information there?
Well, let me just talk on that now that we've finished the issue of the Conservation Commission, which was left open on March 2nd,
Sure.
and go to the issue of the ownership. Because as set forth in the correspondence, the ownership is even more complex because the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority is actually not the owner of the property. Pursuant to the governing statute, rather than title conveying to the property when the MWRA was created in 1984, only care, custody, and control of the property and management of the property was conveyed. So it's actually still owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And for the reasons set forth, we think a strict requirement of being the owner under your regulations, which I point out is a different definition than the statutory definition of applicant, would be unreasonable and unnecessary. I think what we have with regard to the issue that the chair touched on, to make sure that the parties who own the property, or in this case, have care, custody, and control of it, know about it, the submittal in some fashion, is covered in two different fashions. One is the fact that we have submitted the 8M permit for the driveway that was shown on the site plan. And as is set forth in my letter of March 11th, and which David Robinson can review in more detail, that is essentially the same as the subdivision roadway as far as impacts upon the aqueduct, with the only difference being essentially the addition, only significant difference being the addition of the sidewalks on both sides as required by this board. So we do have evidence that they are part or know of the process and have agreed to activity for vehicular crossing of the aqueduct. We further have proposed to you a specific condition of approval that the applicant will produce a new 8M permit at the time or prior to construction of the subdivision. It may be a fair question to ask why the applicant doesn't do that now. And I think there's a clear analogy to that, to what the Conservation Commission is addressing, with the desire to have for reviewing authority, particularly a state agency that's doing this in numerous locations, to specifically have, when work starts, one set of plans that they review and inspect to make sure they're in compliance. The applicant's hope and intent for this site is to build the driveway as shown on the site plan, not the subdivision roadway. That's why we appealed this board's denial of that decision. That's why we asked for an expedited briefing schedule with the land court to bring that to a head in some fashion. We have with the Conservation Commission order of conditions, and we have with the 8M permit as issued, the approvals necessary to do the project that is the desire of the applicant, which is that driveway in some fashion. The only thing that to do to try to achieve your goal of getting that from either the MWRA or the Conservation Commission would be to give up those rights in total. And that's inconsistent with the purpose and intent, particularly while the litigation is still pending with the town and the land court on your denial of the site plan.
Mm-hmm. So the preliminary plan came in July. The preliminary subdivision, which was before the denial. But I just want to clarify what you said, but this subdivision is because of the denial? Did I misunderstand what you said?
No. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I'm not speaking as far as sequential. I'm speaking as to what the intent of the owner of the land is, the developer, as to what they want to do and why it's, in that case, unreasonable to require them to go back and give up permits they have for the use that they want to do in the first instance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So with that, are there any board questions of what's been said so far? Hmm.
I think you covered it all. I had a couple of questions, but they were covered.
Related to,
Carrie,
go ahead.
Carrie, in the beginning, you talked about having a phone conversation with legal counsel and Kathy Joubert, and you basically were giving the board a summarization of
Yes.
everything that you and legal counsel discussed. Can you please put that in writing to the board members so that we can understand that conversation that you had on with legal counsel? Because that was between you and Kathy Joubert and legal counsel, not the other board members. So I think it would be helpful for us to understand that conversation, how it happened, and your takeaways, and even maybe Kathy can add to that, and maybe even legal counsel, because that was a lot that you presented to the board. And so I
Yeah.
think it's worthwhile for us to take, just like any applicant, to take and review that. Then also, I just want to understand a conversation that, and I want to make sure I get this right. You were talking about some case law where the resident hired an attorney and they had one interpretation, and the applicant hired an attorney and he has another interpretation. Was that ever go back to the town legal counsel for their interpretation?
So I was referring to Attorney Timon, who represents the Wicksteads, had one interpretation, and Attorney Donahue had reviewed the cases and had a different interpretation. And I think that when I talked to town council about it, he scanned over. He thought that the most relevant was maybe the Conway case, but that he just had scanned over it at that time, and there was part of the final decision was an unpublished decision. I'm not sure if that's the right term. It was an unrecorded decision. So he had just presented it conceptually what it was about versus like going into back and forth with really digging into case law and arguing each side. So there wasn't, I think he felt like a couple of the cases where it could have been viewed as it was contested land. And I think Attorney Donahue had maybe referenced that as well, that it was contested land. But the underlying piece of it was that the planning board, that the owners, let's see, that the,
So I guess the point that I'm trying to get at is, as board members who aren't part of this conversation with the town's attorney, and that maybe this was discussed there, that you have one attorney who represents the residents specifically right around that neighborhood, who has one determination, and then you have the applicant whose legal counsel is giving you another determination. I think in all fairness, as a resident of the community and as a planning board member, I'd want to hear from town council's determination, right? Because
so I think
it's because I think it's hard to ask a board, do you listen to the residents? And this attorney for the residents only is hired for one specific neighborhood, or do you listen to the applicant's legal counsel? I think if that's weighing on anyone's decision, I think you need to hear from legal counsel.
But in looking at, just to clarify, so our conversation wasn't to untangle case law. It was really about what was within the board's authority. And what was very clear that wasn't a discussion over case law was what was fair to the board to ask. And what was stated in several different ways was that it was fair for the board to request some sort of proof or acknowledgement that the MWRA land is shown in the subdivision application, and that's okay, and that we need some form of consent. It was said in many different ways, many different sentences, that it's well within our authority to do so, and that it was really the burden of the applicant to show that they're in compliance. And it's a reasonable question. So the point wasn't to argue case law back and forth. And it was really just, in fact, it was it wasn't really the focus of the conversation at all. And,
okay.
and nor do I think-
Can I make a recommendation if possible? Because there was a lot that was presented to the board in the beginning, again, of a conversation that you as chair and the planner had with the legal counsel. Can I make a recommendation that we ask if we're going to continue this hearing, which I'd recommend we continue the hearing, that at the next hearing, the town legal counsel comes and participates at that hearing.
Yeah, I think we're getting down to a point where we have a due date of April 7th. So there's no additional, this has a deadline to it. We've continued it over and over again. We know we're not getting additional information.
We even continue the hearing and have legal counsel attend. I mean, I've been on the planning board for years and done that. I mean, if the board agrees, you can continue it and have legal counsel participate and attend at the next meeting. I'm just talking about discussions that have happened. There seems to be just a little bit of, it doesn't make sense what you're presenting. And if board members are making decisions based on one attorney interpretations and another attorney interpretations, and then I had a discussion with this, I just think it's worthwhile having in what might be an important decision. And if you deny it, it's, you know what's going to happen, that it's important to have legal counsel come and advise the board.
Okay.
May I?
Yes, please.
Thanks. Because I think it's important to separate to some extent some of the details that we're looking for in the particular cases, and the chair was spot on to say that not to argue about cases here. That's misery. As to whether that you need a signature on the Form C, as opposed to the overarching goal as articulated by the chair from the conversation with counsel, which is that you know that the property owner who has an interest is aware of the process. And what we're trying to do is take the unique circumstances here of dealing with a large state agency and the Commonwealth itself and apply it here, particularly where it's not the only application before those boards. So what we're basically saying is make it a condition of approval that work cannot be done in the subdivision until the MWRA has provided to the satisfaction of the board, or the applicant has through the MWRA, evidence that the work shown in the subdivision plan is acceptable to the MWRA. Candidly, we hope we never have to produce that, because we hope to be able to rely upon the existing ADEM for the driveway under the site plan that's subject to the litigation. But if not, and we're doing the subdivision, we're saying nothing can happen physically on the site. We can't effectuate the subdivision until we get that and give it to you to your satisfaction. And if you want to make it a condition of approval that it has to be subject to a further public hearing with notice to abutters, we'd accept that also. It's really a matter of timing. It's not a matter of getting to the substance of the issue as to making sure that an easement is effectuated in the appropriate fashion.
Okay, here's what concerns me about the 8M permit, is that this 8M permit has been something that we have asked for since the original Zero Bartlett. And in the very first discussions when I asked for it, the response to me from the applicant, from actually Mr. Lopez, was, why do you want to see that? And right there and then it flagged to me that I wanted to see this permit and I wanted to understand what it was all about.
And it was produced.
Well, we had asked for it over and over again. We had asked to see the application and the permit executed, and we finally got the permit. So fine, that finally came through. And then we had asked for it, as soon as the preliminary subdivision was filed, we asked to see the 8M permit. Every single hearing we've said, can we see the 8M permit? You're gonna need the 8M permit. The preliminary was denied because there was no 8M permit. There was some inconsistencies with the impact statement that we didn't understand, and whatever other reason, I can't remember. But every single hearing now this has been 8 months of asking about a permit, which to me would ease my mind that the MWRA is even remotely aware that they're in a subdivision application.
I understand. I understand your point, but you know, with all due respect, the only way to get an 8M permit for the subdivision is to give up the 8M permit for the driveway. You can't have both from the MWRA. It's similar to what the Conservation Commission is saying. You have to, whatever you have, you either have to amend it or get a different one and supersede it. And we're not prepared to give that up at the present time. But we're not saying that you're not entitled to it before we effectuate the subdivision. We'll provide it. in a fashion that you find acceptable before we construct the subdivision roadway.
Okay. But the problem is what I'm looking at. You're telling me there's no warehouse in the subdivision plan. I'm to assume that these are blank lots because the impact statement is particularly focused on parcel H way. Even though the reports show other impacts with a warehouse, I am to assume that this is only a subdivision road. But I'm looking at a permit that is to an old application that explicitly says it is for that application and that land. You're asking me to not care about that, not have any proof whatsoever that the MWRA is even aware they're in a subdivision application. No, there's a lot of leaps of faith that are happening here. And I really struggle with not any sort of proof that MWRA is even aware that they're in a subdivision application. I don't know. I want to give board members a chance to comment. I feel like I've talked.
Can I just reply to that?
Please do, sure.
Thank you. I think, and it's the purpose of the March 11th letter that I submitted, and if it would be helpful for the board, I can ask Mr. Robinson to pull it up, because the reference to the warehouse is wholly irrelevant to the issue of the easement of the aqueduct. The only thing in easement of the aqueduct is either a driveway or a roadway crossing. And the effective difference is whether it has sidewalks or not. That's what the March 11th sketch shows you. We're glad to walk through it if the board so desires. But to suggest that somehow it's tied to a warehouse just isn't accurate.
Okay.
That's not the sketch.
So this is the application that went to MWRA. This is what was sent over from MWRA. They have no further application from you. This is the permit. It describes the land and the purpose of what you can do with this permit. And it then gives quite a few pages of terms and conditions by which this permit can be revoked. That's all the board has. It's a permit for a previous application that has been denied. It references land that is not the same. It's for an installation of an access driveway. The plan is different. You've now widened the road. This is, what is this, 24 feet? And now what is the new one? 50 feet?
Why don't we have Mr. Robinson pull the overlay up that he did?
Oh, sure. I think I have that too, actually. I do have that in my files up here.
David, you got it handy?
Yeah, I mean, I can do it if that's all right, or.
Yeah, sure. Oh, wait, hold on. Here it is. Hold on. It's just huge. Okay, is this what you're referring to? If not, if this is what you meant, that's okay. You can share. Is this what you meant, the overlay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not saying that it's in a totally different spot. I'm just saying that the only thing this board has on record is a permit that looks like this little area here, and referencing a land.
Why don't you give Mr. Robinson a chance to describe how this?
I will, sure, go ahead.
So if you want to go to the larger plan there, sure. So this plan shows the subdivision road and the drainage easement outlined in a heavy red color, and in bold black is the permitted, the same roadway as the MWRA permit. So as you can see, I mean, they both cross the same area across the easement, and they both sort of bend up and to the right. So they're substantially similar. The same utilities go across, same drainage pattern. Honestly, the other plan, if you go to the other plan that you had up, the zoomed in view from the MWRA that they have on record file, this plan is taken from the exact same drawing file as the site plan. And this is just a zoomed in view. It's just a different scale, zoomed in with extra information that was requested by the MWRA. It's the same exact plan, slightly different view. And at the bottom, you have a nice profile, which is what the MWRA was interested in seeing, the the profile of the crossing over the MWRA line aqueduct that shows that there's sufficient vertical clearance between our driveway and the top of the aqueduct, which is what they were looking for. So this is the same plan as the site plan, which is substantially similar to the subdivision, same utilities going across in a very similar fashion.
So if we approve this site plan, this subdivision road, why would you even need the original access drive permit?
The answer is because what we hope to do is to be successful in the litigation, come back and obtain site plan approval from you. That will be the driveway plan. It will not be.
It wouldn't be you don't even want the subdivision road.
Our desire is not to build the subdivision. Our desire is to build a plan that we submitted that this board denied and that we've sought an appeal on. And that's what was approved by the MWRA, and that's what it was approved by the Conservation Commission.
Okay. So if we approve this subdivision, you don't even want this subdivision, you want the access driveway that you originally applied for with MWRA.
Well, unfortunately, nobody's made me king as to what I want.
No, I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
What overarching, the Gutierrez company's in the business of developing commercial industrial property. They want to develop the property. Their plan A, their plan they want, is the plan you rejected. This is a different model for a different use, which will be available to them in their toolbox to figure out how to develop it. There may end up being a further plan before the site gets developed. I don't know that. It's just one tool that's going forward. The planning process is one in which an applicant can seek multiple permits for a site for totally different uses at any one time. It's the way the system works. So we're just looking for two totally different things, not conflating them into one.
Okay, Amy,
and as to the easement crossing, they are essentially the same.
Okay, Amy, did you have a question? I saw you.
Well, I'm just listening to what he wants to do. Couldn't you do that right now with your two A&Rs, build your accessible drive without a subdivision by giving yourself an easement over a parcel B? Like, why the whole subdivision process? Like, couldn't you already do that with the two?
I'm not sure I'm following. Nor do I think what else we could do isn't really the subject matter of this continued hearing. It's the application that a property owner is entitled to bring to subdivide their property.
Okay, well, you were just saying what your final goal was, and I didn't think that the subdivision was needed to get to the final goal that you were discussing. So then it would.
It wasn't. The plan you rejected was what I need.
Okay, so we rejected the first plan, that it's been appealed. So that's a separate issue. But now we're looking at a subdivision, and you're saying because we have the previous plan, we're not willing to get the permits we need for this subdivision because we can't have two open. So we can't have.
That's not accurate. That's not accurate.
Okay, well, please help then. Could you clarify that?
What I've said a number of times, and which I put in writing, is that at such time, if this board were to approve the subdivision was going to be constructed. Prior to the construction of it, we would provide evidence satisfactory to this board that the MWRA had approved the subdivision plan, accepted and approved by this board.
Okay.
I can't be any clearer.
But the reason you're not getting that 8M now is because why?
Because we have an 8M for what is our desired project, which is a driveway to go.
You don't want two open two 8Ms. You can't have two M's.
As I said before, it's analogous to the MWR. It's analogous to the Conservation Commission and the DEP. The reason, from the DEP's viewpoint, they only want one order of conditions is they receive literally hundreds of applications each day for orders of condition. They can't have multiple orders open on a site and then be sent out to do an enforcement or inspection, not knowing what set of plans to look at. It's analogous to the MWRA.
I
Until it's a
understand they don't want them, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes there are two NOIs. Like it's not what they want, but it could
I'm only
happen.
reading the memo. I'm only reading the memo they submitted.
Huh?
I'm reading the memo they submitted, and I'm reading what their desire is. And as a general rule, personally, and the Gutierrez company try to comply with what boards want.
But it sounds like that we're gonna have two things open. Like
Planning's
you
different.
huh?
Planning is different.
Right. So planning can have two things open, but conservation doesn't want two things open, and the DEP doesn't want two things open.
Mark,
Yep.
can I just jump in for a second? Effectively, there could be two. You could have a subdivision road and a site plan approval, but effectively, the planning board does not have two things open because you denied a site plan approval. Correct, Mark? So that is not open with the planning board.
That's correct.
Okay, so then in that case, if we take that out and hold it separately, then we still require, you still have to come with the right permits for this application. It doesn't, you don't, it's not up to us we don't have wide discretion of conditions on a subdivision as we do with zoning to decide that you don't have to, we can put conditions on this because we don't need to see the permits when we're asking for the permits. I guess it's a separate application. It's a whole separate plan. It's not fair to this board to do the job we need to do to not provide those permits to us so that we can be sure that you actually have, number one, the full authority to execute on this subdivision as presented, because nothing's been proven to us that full authority is there, even by way of an 8M permit, by way of a letter, by way of an 8M permit. Forget a signature. I mean, the form doesn't even enlist, the Form C doesn't even list parcel H way on it. So how are we to make our decision and adhere by subdivision rules and regs and make sure you have the full authority to execute on the plan as presented if we aren't sure that you are owner and authorized to do so with any proof at all?
Carrie,
Yes.
can I just make a suggestion to the board, and I don't know how the applicant feels about this as well. Is it possible to grant a continuance to the next meeting, like I said, and ask if legal counsel can come in and guide us through this? I mean, we've had applicants before. We've been sort of at a stalled position, and he's actually helped guide the board through. I mean, we did this down the street when we had that soccer, the soccer building that they built, right? We asked him to help us guide us through a couple of issues there. And we sort of went through, we made some adjustments and we're able to move forward. I feel like we're at a stalled position right now, and I'd like to hear from legal counsel. And I think in fairness to the applicant, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think to bring legal counsel in and then ask him the questions to help answer, because it seems like the applicant is saying one thing, you have a question, and I have some questions for legal counsel on it.
Okay.
With regards to the permits.
Okay. Board member comments on that. Amy.
In my opinion, I don't feel stalled at all. Like, I don't think that's gonna answer, like, I don't want to spend a meeting going back and forth with case law between lawyers. I think we have our subdivision rules and regulations and criteria, and we go through that. And I don't know, I don't want to spend a meeting going through case law, and that's just the way I feel.
I don't think we're talking about going through case law. It's the question about these permits.
But I think they've been answered by both sides. Like, I feel like, I don't know, I guess I feel like those have been answered. I don't have any other questions.
Other comments or other thoughts? Oh, go ahead, Millie.
Is there, obviously there's a difficulty with withdrawing the original permit and then resubmitting it if your appeal goes through. Is it a matter of timing and cost and paperwork that you've already submitted? Is that what that one's about?
It's trying to keep the record clear, certainly. And we think that the condition, which can clearly be imposed, particularly since it's offered by the applicant, that we produce it if the subdivision roadway is what is being constructed, achieves everyone's purpose for the purposes of allowing this board to know it will happen before the work occurs.
Okay.
As to, if I might, Madam Chair, as to Ms. Gillespie's suggestion, it's up to the board. But if the board thinks it would benefit from getting feedback from town council, then we'd certainly agree to a continuation, and we would extend the decision date to make Ms. Jubert's life easier also.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I have received the message in several ways and forms that it is fair for us to ask for some sort of proof of ownership. And we've asked for that many times, and there seems to be none coming. So if we're to continue, we're looking at May, because we just stacked up our April schedule with the previous two applications. So now we're looking at extending this to a May date. And at this point, I'm personally not convinced that we're getting anything different. And I'm not, I have no question that it's been said to me that it's a reasonable ask for us to request some sort of proof of ownership. And Kathy, you were at that meeting too. I don't know. I feel like it was said in multiple different ways. I can't hear you.
Well, one of my takeaways from the meeting that we had with town council was that it was reasonable for the board to put in as a condition that the applicant needs to receive their 8M permit before, receiving any building permits, or however we want to word that. So that was definitely one of my takeaways when we met with town council.
Yeah.
Was that it wasn't necessarily that the 8M permit had to be issued ahead of time, but that it was common, for the board to put it in as a condition that proof of, or however we word it, but it's a condition, that 8M permit has to be produced again prior to building permit, prior to construction, prior to occupancy permit, however we would want to word that.
Yep. So I think the 8M permit piece itself was fine as a condition. I think what I was suggesting is that perhaps that could even serve as the proof, if we weren't to get a letter or a cosigner. So I think specifically he said that they should be able to issue a letter, whoever the owner is, the owner of record, which I did pull up from the Registry of Deeds and is the Commonwealth, to issue a letter that says something to the effect of, we understand this subdivision application has been submitted. Our property is shown on it. We have no objection. And it would be appropriate for this type of, whether it's a letter, and I had asked, well, what form does that come in? And he said that they would, whether it's a letter or some sort of, that they have the burden to show that they're in compliance, and that we have some sort of contemporaneous evidence that the property owner is aware of what's going on, and that would be a reasonable ask. And that, because at this point, the MWRA has had no part in the application process, whether executing forms, appearing at hearings, or anything. So it would not be in excess of board authority to request some sort of proof, whatever that proof may be. I'm suggesting even as simple as the 8M permit would at least give me an idea that they have any idea that they're in the subdivision application, so that I know if we're to approve it, that I'm not going to try to spend, we're going to have to track down the owner to make sure that they can fulfill what's in the plan that we've worked to make sure is safe, and all the other things, drainage, all the other things part of the subdivision plan. If we can't track down the owner at the end, then we've done a terrible service to this town by not at least asking for, does this owner of this property acknowledge that they're in a subdivision plan? It was very clear to me. I mean,
I don't know if this will help the board in general, but they received notification of the subdivision through, through the public hearing process.
then send us a letter, send us some, we literally have nothing that shows that they are even aware they're in this plan. And that's my primary concern. If that's going to be solved in May, I guess so be it. But so far, I'm not convinced that it's going to be solved in May. And I don't know if it's worth continuing that long. And I guess it's up for board debate, what your thoughts are in continuing to May for the meeting with council to then decide if we think that MWA is aware they're in a subdivision application. Any thoughts from board members on that?
I think for me, I mean, so I'm still, and I appreciate Attorney Donahue's input tonight. But as I read the rules and regs for subdivisions, I mean, it says right there, applicant, the person who applies for the approval of a plan of a subdivision and his administrators, executors, heirs, successors, and assigns, the applicant or applicants must be the owner of all the land included in the proposed subdivision. And even with some of the case law that's been provided and been argued, which is went to the courts, and it says the planning board waived the requirement that the applicant be the owner of record. The court upheld that the planning board lacked the authority to grant such a waiver. So it's language like this that I'm kind of really hung up on, and I feel it's our responsibility to make sure that these questions are all answered. And then furthermore, when you look at the 8M, it's just number 5 in terms and conditions. The authority may revoke this permit at any time. The sale and disposition of the land by its owner will cause this permit to terminate without further notice. And I guess that to me says that you don't have the right of that land forever. And especially if you do plan on selling it. So there's a couple things here that I'm having a hard time with.
Okay, I'm gonna, are there any other, aside from the 8M piece, are there other, the board had commented before about the impact statements, the inconsistencies. Are there comments on that? Further comments on that?
On the impact statement?
Yes, the board had expressed concern that in some cases we're looking at reports about the warehouse, and in some cases we're looking at the parcel H way.
Right, yeah, no.
So are we to consider this to be parcel H way only, or are we to consider a warehouse is involved with this? Because the reports are very different. So if you could just maybe clarify that piece of it.
Well, the only application for approval is for the way itself. Any use of the land fronting on the way would be subject to further review and approval by this board or other boards when that happens. So it's a little difficult, particularly where the use is not as clear, by way of example, as would have existed for a single family residential subdivision, to try to understand what the impact statement relates to, because obviously a road itself doesn't do anything. So we try to provide some color based upon an expected use of the site, but certainly that use is not part and parcel of your approval in any fashion whatsoever.
Okay, were there any other questions on that, or is it just a matter of clarifying?
I think it's just a matter, for me, it's just a matter of clarifying.
So for example, there are some cases like for traffic report refers to the warehouse and the phase 1 refers to the warehouse, but the application is just for the roadway. So how are we to interpret that just for the application at hand?
I guess I would pose the question back to the board. To the extent your regulation looks for a traffic impact analysis for an approval that's limited to a roadway, what what type of data does the board expect one to use to be able to extrapolate that analysis?
Oh, Amy, go ahead.
I guess what I would do is if you're asking for a subdivision of 4 lots, give us worst case scenario on 4 lots, how they can be maxed out, how they could be used, worst case scenario. That way we could actually have an impact statement on what a subdivision could do. Like we have, you say we can only talk about the roadway to nowhere, but there's definitely going to be 2 to 3 warehouses or buildings or soccer fields or anything on it. And when I looked at subdivisions for housing, you know, when they got their subdivisions, it talked about, you got a sketch of the house that was on it and it had drainage and there were drainage easements, but we're getting an application for a road to nowhere with no information, where our bylaws, rules and regulations call for impact statements for traffic hazards, environmental hazards. And that's hard to do when you just have a road.
I mean, it makes sense because it sounds like you're only applying for the subdivision because you're in a denial for the previous plan. So it's hard for you to present the application and it's hard for us to interpret the impact because this is like I don't mean to say secondary application. It's a, I don't know. Default, yeah. So if it's not what you truly desire, it's hard for us to, I mean, let's be honest of what we want to happen with the subdivision, and it's not a road to nowhere. So we need to be able to assess impact, and it's hard to do with the current analysis flip-flopping back and forth. So it sounded to me like that's what the board had struggled with, and I don't know if still struggles with or is able to parse out properly or what. Any thoughts on that?
I think also the studies that were done were probably the traffic situation on Bartlett area is fluid and it's changing as these buildings are filling up and pretty much maxing out. And we're seeing emails of people with concerns every single day. And so those are the other things. I don't know if that was really considered in that impact report as to really the change in the warehouses there and the traffic that's taken over in the last just couple months.
I mean, one of the other questions that I have on the subdivision is there I know it doesn't seem like that's the plan you want, but are there opportunities to further subdivide some of the lots further down so that we, if we can get the maximum impact, would it only be 4 lots, or is there, potential for even subdividing parcel H even more? So right now we're looking at 4 parcels, but is there a condition that we could impose that limits it to 4 lots? To take something like that off the table?
I'm not sure that would help. So how do you mean that to help solve impact? Just so that it's.
Well, if we only did if we did impact on 4 lots, but then they want to subdivide a larger lot into 2 other lots, because they don't seem to know what the long-term, if they have to have a plan, they're not sure what it is yet. So right now I'm looking at parcel H that could be probably divided again if they wanted to.
I almost feel like we either have to make a decision or continue it till after the appeal, if that's what they're waiting for.
All right, why don't we, I've seen people have had their hands up. I want to quickly take some public comments and make sure we have that as well. I'm going to bring in John Wickstead. You've had your hand up for a long time.
Hi, it's John Wickstead from 2 Stirpert Lane in Northborough. As the board knows, I'm represented by Benjamin Timon, who's also on this call, and I would defer my time to Mr. Timon, if that's okay with the board.
Okay. Attorney Timon, you're on for comments.
Thank you very much. Benjamin Timon, who represents the Wicksteads.
Oops, you're on mute for a second. Oops, Attorney Timon, you're just on mute.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep. Go
Okay,
ahead.
sorry about that. Ben Timon for the Wicksteads. I joined the meeting late, but I've been on for the last 15 or 20 minutes. Long enough to hear a couple of board members say that the last thing you want to hear is an explanation of case law, so I'm not going to do that. Take a cue there. I did send in a letter on February 25th, on which I did lay out some of the basic precepts of subdivision requirements like this one that require all owners to be applicants. And I just today read the letter from Attorney Donahue taking issue with some of those case interpretations. Again, I'm not going to go into depth, only to say that the basic principles that I laid out in my letter are absolutely the case, and the important ones to keep in mind for the board, respectfully, are that this type of requirement regarding ownership has been upheld repeatedly by the courts. There is the one case where the appeals court found, as I think members Zitten just mentioned, found that it was erroneous for a waiver to be granted. And of course, as the board knows very well, it has tremendous discretion to deny waiver requests. So here we have, a rule that is completely enforceable, has been upheld by the courts, that the applicant has said pretty forthrightly it's not going to comply with, at least not now. So they don't want to even go to the MWRA to get a new 8M permit because they want to hedge their bets with respect to their appeal. That's not the board's problem, and the board has, again, all the discretion in the world to not allow the applicant to have these range of options, but rather to just simply require the applicant to meet what is a very straightforward application requirement. They haven't met it for the reasons that the chair has mentioned and other reasons. They don't intend to meet it, and the board has every right to not waive that requirement. And I think from my client's perspective, it would be, a tremendous waste of time and resources for them and for other neighbors to have to kind of, go to the barricades every time and come to these meetings to fight something that is fundamentally a deficient application and shouldn't go forward for that reason.
Okay. Thank you for commenting. I'm going to move you back to an attendee. Let's see. Don, I'm going to move you back to an attendee as well. And then I have Kristen here, Kristen Wickstead.
Hi, Kristen Wickstead to Stirrup Lane. So Mr. Donahue says that it's the same information and the same plan, the permit that he keeps talking about. But if so, then it just seems like he would already have submitted it to the planning board, and he would already have the thumbs up from the MWRA to subdivide. So it seems to me that they are trying to get away with something to me. And the MWRA is co-owner of this property, and they don't even know this subdivision application is happening. So also, if I ever got to be the king of Northborough, just on that theme, I would donate all of the 0 Bartlett Street property for open space and a dog park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have Burnswig. It's just his last name, I'm sorry. Is it Michael Burnswig?
Hi there. Yes, Michael Burnswig, 4 Jenkins Drive out here in Northborough. And just want to comment. I mean, I think, for all the reasons that have been stated to this point, obviously this is like a Hail Mary pass. Let's throw something else out there and see if anything will stick to the wall. I think out of respect for everyone's time, respect for the board, and most importantly, respect for the process and all of the procedures and documentation that are in place. The bottom line is application that's valid needs to be submitted. And it really feels like a waste of everyone's time just submitting an application without all the fundamental basics in place for a valid application. And just feels like a road to nowhere with, just throwing something up against the wall to see if it sticks. And in fairness, I think it just is not appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for commenting. Okay, any other comments? It looks like that was it for the end of the hands up. Yep. I'm sorry, Ann, I brought you on by mistake. Hold on a second. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry about that. Okay, then I have no other public comments at this time. Well, I do actually want to talk about the waiver. So we did receive a request for a waiver. So why don't we take a quick look at that? We have in the last letter, let's see. Just give me a minute to pull that up. That would be from the 15th, I think. Yes, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a waiver request. Okay, can everybody see the waiver request? I think everybody received a copy of this.
Mhm.
Okay, so regardless of any sort of case law arguments or positions on it, the applicant stands by their position, but also at the same time would like to request a waiver that the owner, let's see, I won't read it to you word for word. I'm just reading it over again. All right, so that does not have to be identified as an applicant on Form C or sign it, anything like that. And then again, stated the condition component of that it would be a condition. Any questions on this waiver or thoughts on the waiver? So obviously, in our rules and regs, we can waive strict we can waive strict compliance with our own subdivision rules and regs where such action is in public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of subdivision control law. Determining whether a public waiver is in public interest, obviously that's what involves a large measure of discretion, and just making sure that we consider, obviously it's related to whatever's in the public interest. The applicant has expressed that the reason is it is in the public interest so as not to deprive the private landowner of the ability to subdivide its land due to the absence of the signature. So that would be what's in the public interest. Are there any comments on the waiver or questions on the waiver?
So they're asking that we grant the waiver to not comply with the signature of the owners?
Right, so in our rules and regs, we have ownership is a requirement, and they requested a waiver to waive the ownership requirement.
And that is in our jurisdiction?
So yeah, in our rules and regs, this goes back to the conversation about whether, defining what an owner is, defining what an applicant is. It's in our rules and regs that the applicant be an owner of all the land in the subdivision. So that's outlined there. And then we're allowed to give waivers. Whether or not we can waive ownership has been debated. That's what's been debated in the courts, and what each side has said you can do, you can't do. But really, granting a waiver is certainly within the discretion of the board if we feel that it's within the public interest to grant a waiver. So that's something we'd have to discuss if we feel like granting this waiver is, serves the public interest and doesn't deviate from the purpose of subdivision law.
May I be heard?
Oh, please.
So I guess a couple of things before you vote on the waiver, if that's where this is going. At least one member has suggested a continuation so that you can have some direct discussion with town council. And we're open to that extension. I think it would serve you well. It's also been suggested this evening that perhaps some form of other written documentation might help the board in this fashion. There was reference to a letter from the MWRA that they were aware of the subdivision filing with no objection. That's not something that we have reviewed or sought, but if the board believes that that would be helpful to them in deciding either the waiver or final disposition, then we're glad to try to see if we can endeavor to see if that's a possibility from one or a couple of different state agencies. But I would urge the board to, particularly since the applicant's open to it, to take advantage of the time being afforded to get feedback on this directly from council on a particular legal issue and what the position ultimately will end up having to be if the matter goes into litigation.
Okay, so in order, by saying that you would be able to do a letter instead.
I didn't say I'd be able to. I said we'd endeavor to.
Okay, so if you endeavored to do a letter, we would essentially be waiving the ownership requirement. We'd be waiving the, that the owner be identified as an applicant on the submitted form, so that we would be, so basically it's essentially requesting a waiver so that we could have some other form of ownership, proof, whether it's a letter or whatever else.
I guess I would have put it differently. What I was thinking is that if such a letter were to exist, and it's not a commitment of the applicant other than to make the effort to try to get it, but if it were to exist, it may allow the board or may give an opportunity for board members to give it fair and impartial thought prior to voting on the technicality of the waiver, which requires, technically it requires a signature of the Division of Capital Asset Management for the Commonwealth to sign off on, which would be just administratively a Herculean task. It's not MWRA because they don't own the property. But if a letter would be helpful, then we're willing to undertake it. And I think that the board would benefit from a robust discussion, which doesn't have to involve public discussion with town council on this issue before you make a decision.
Okay, so by saying that a letter is acceptable, we are waiving the requirement to show ownership.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is.
Right, but I'm saying that essentially by saying a letter is acceptable instead of a signature, we're waiving the showing of ownership. Showing the ownership is really showing that you have the owner of record on file on your Form C, that they've signed the document and all of that. In lieu of that, you would do a letter, which would really be waiving the requirement that the owner be a co-applicant. So what I'm really just getting at is finding, before we go all this way and effort, I'm interested to know if it makes a difference to board members. Are you willing to waive the requirement of ownership before we send the applicant on an expedition to get, if it's going to take a lot to even get a letter, before we send the applicant on an expedition, I think it's fair that the applicant understand if board members are willing to waive this ownership component to help inform what you should do next. I think it would be a disservice to you to run around doing something and then the board says, well, we're not even going to waive that. So, we just wasted everybody's time. So I'm curious thoughts from board members on the waiving ownership in general.
I can.
The only thing I'd add is it may be premature to ask without knowing what the letter says. While I appreciate the concern about the applicant's energy and time, we're willing to put the energy and time in to see if it's even a possibility. And if it can give some peace of mind to the board to be able to either grant a waiver or an approval, so because it's consistent with the purpose and intent of the subdivision. And I think you would benefit as part of that with a discussion with town council
But if the
when
board.
you have the letter.
Right, but if the board's not willing to give a waiver, I'm just saying, what's the point? So I'm just curious to know, Amy, you're gonna say something about what your thoughts are on the waiver.
Well, I guess I'll talk to it because of what he said. So if the letter, well, I think on the application, you need the signature of the owner. So if the letter stated that they were willing to sign the application, then that might cover it. But, you know, we have specific rules and regulations, and if we waive every single rule and regulation, what was the point of any rules and regulations to begin with? Like, we follow the bylaws, the ZBA follows the bylaws, we have subdivision rules and regulations. And to me, it sounds like we're being asked to waive all the rules and regulations. And, you know, I guess that's my main point. What's the point of the rules and regulations if we're gonna waive them all? So I guess I wouldn't be open to waiving this requirement, in my opinion.
Okay, other thoughts? I can't see everybody, so Millie, I see you. Do you have any thoughts, or Anthony?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of stuck on this one, but I mean, it still doesn't it doesn't meet up to the rules and regulations, the specific wording. It's very black and white in the way that it's written. And I do think it's important to uphold the bylaws and to have that consistency. So unless the Commonwealth were to be noted on an application as being somebody who's partaking in the application, I don't know if I would feel comfortable with it.
Okay, Amy?
Add one other thing, it would set precedent. Anything we do will set precedent. So say I own my lot, my neighbor has a lot, and then I own a lot 2 doors down. I'm gonna ask to waive their right to the ownership to be signed on this document so I can subdivide the land on both sides. I don't know. I feel like it's also it's a slippery slope if we start waiving all of our rules and regulations because we're setting precedents.
I would only point out that to the best of my knowledge, this may be the first subdivision submitted in Northborough that didn't have some form of a waiver request to a specific rule or regulation, other than this relating to getting the approval of the Commonwealth, where it is indisputable that there's an easement across the property. So to suggest that this is waiving each and every regulation, I think ignores the previous approvals of this board in which a number of waivers have been granted, as I'm sure either Ms. Joubert or Mr. Litchfield could inform you on previous subdivisions.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that, Amy, I don't know if I don't want to speak for you, but I think what we're talking about is that, okay, we normally, it's in our rules and regs that Conservation Commission order of conditions should be a part of the planning board's decision, but you don't want to do that. So we're technically waiving that and making a condition. We have permits. It's within our rules and regs that it's the applicant's responsibility to get all the permits associated with the plan, but you don't want to get that because you have this other plan that you really want, and this is your secondary plan, so you don't want to get all of the new, you don't want to do a second wave of permits because you're still waiting for the first wave. So we want us to waive that. And then you don't want to, you're having trouble with the ownership component. So you also want us to waive that. And then we're having trouble understanding the impact statement. So you want us to extrapolate, half of what the old application was and half of what this application is. It's not just any one component that's making me uncomfortable with waiving this piece. For me, it's this entire package of, we're not meeting these key components And it's technically one waiver after the other, where it's not just a waiver that you want to make your sidewalk a different size, or a waiver of width, or a waiver of something that has to do with, I don't know, the cul-de-sac. These are all things that have to be provided as part of the application that we're now asked to waive. And it's a lot to ask the board to, as part of our role to be in strict compliance with our rules and regs, and we're being asked to waive several of those. I view that as making the level of discomfort. I don't know, Amy, did I speak for you, or?
No, that's what I was thinking too. It's not just one, it's the traffic impact, because we're not going to talk about the buildings that are on there. And like you said, it's all the different ones all combined. Like, because I've read all the subdivision rules and regulation, and you go down the criteria. And I guess that's what we have to vote on. And I think we should vote on the criteria. And I think this is, we've had plenty of time. Like you said, the preliminary started in July. We got this in December. I think as a board, at least for me, the questions seem to have been answered.
I'm just going to switch over to the Form C. So this is your current Form C for the parcels, but not parcel H way. So these are the deeds. This is the deed reflected, but not that particular. The aqueduct portion is not, and you recognize that you don't own that. So what you're saying, what you would provide does not change this Form C. This stays as is with, these are the people responsible. So when if we approve this subdivision and we ask there's some sort of, bond or covenant or way that you're going to prove to us that you're going to execute this as presented, and we need to see who the people are responsible for that, this is where we go to, right? This is where we see who are the owners of this, who's responsible. And to not have the owners listed, I think creates, it doesn't serve the purpose of the subdivision control law in my mind. And that's what I struggle with in this waiver, in that it doesn't, I don't think that I'm looking to waive the ownership requirement. I don't think that would be something that I will end up looking to do for several reasons. So I don't know any other, Michelle,
I do. So I guess I'm trying to understand, Carrie, are you not willing to give the applicant a continuance to the next meeting to invite town council to discuss these discrepancies or these concerns, or
I'm just
for
wondering
clarification?
if we have to wait until May,
Yeah.
and the board is not open to the waivers, then what are we coming back to do? I want to make sure if we're coming back because there's something here that we expect, or how we're going to move this forward. If the board is thinking, well, yeah, I do want to give that waiver, then that's one thing. But if a majority of the board is saying, I don't want to waive that requirement, and
Well, I don't understand why the board wouldn't want to understand, would not want to hear town legal counsel. You had a conversation with him and Kathy. I didn't have it, Millie didn't have it, Anthony and Amy didn't have it. So I guess what I'm saying is we've gone down this before, where we've been in a predicament where we've relied on legal counsel to help work through some issues. We most recently did it on the indoor soccer fields that were just down the street, and we were able to get resolution there. So I understand what you're saying. I understand what the applicant's saying, and I understand the recommendation to bring in legal counsel. I just don't understand, after talking about this for well over an hour and a half now, why we wouldn't consider just extending the meeting and then having legal counsel come in and talk to us about it. If legal counsel says it's within your jurisdiction to not grant this waiver, and here's the reason why, and here's how I can advise you, then he can help guide you on that. I just think it's worthwhile having him participate it, because certainly you and Kathy had a conversation with him to help sift through some of these questions. And I feel like we're going over the questions over and over and over again. And I just think it would be helpful.
Okay.
We've
He
done
told
it
us-
before. I wouldn't recommend it had we not done it several times before.
In my opinion, though, we met with legal counsel 2 meetings ago and he explained waivers and special permits and discretionary and that it was up to the board. It was for a different case, but it's the same thing. Like, to me, I feel like we've already gone down that road 2 meetings ago. So now we're going to kick the can out to May to go through the same discussion.
I mean, I guess it's up to the board. If the board wants, if we feel, if people are considering a waiver on ownership, then that's one thing. If they're, and it's worth the continuance. If they're not, we're going to send the applicant on a wild goose chase. And then we're going to come back in May and tell the applicant they just wasted their time. So is the wild goose chase worth it? I guess that's the question I'm asking the board.
Well, you also asked the applicant to go resolve some of this with the state. And so maybe that is part of their wild goose chase, but you asked him to go try to resolve this through the state. And their legal counsel already said, we'll do our best to see if what we can resolve with some of the information that you're looking for.
Well, yeah, but I guess what the board is saying is if they're not willing to accept a waiver, then the bottom line is they have to be a co-signer. Does the applicant feel like you can get the owner to co-sign Form C?
But why don't I suggest this? Without trying to decide right now, why don't we continue to May? Why don't you ask town council to come? Between now and May, we'll try to get either or some form of a correspondence from a state agency acknowledging they're aware of the application and have no objection or language to some effect, or obtain the signature of some state official on the Form C. And whatever we get, we'll bring then. And then you can decide what you want to do based upon what we present and what town council advises you. When town council knows whatever he advises you, he then is going to have to defend somewhere else if the decision of the board is to disapprove the subdivision. I think that gets everybody to a position where at least you know what you're doing. We weren't able to get anybody to sign anything in 2 weeks. I'm not promising we're going to get anybody to sign anything in May, but we'll make an effort and we'll present whatever we have, and you'll make whatever determination you're going to have, and then we'll proceed accordingly, or somebody else will proceed accordingly.
Okay, so the applicant is willing to attempt to get a signature on the Form C, perhaps a letter which will go back to the waiver. Board thoughts on that? Michelle, it sounds like you're for it. Any other thoughts?
For me, it would take a signature on the application. And I really don't think I need town council because I feel like we just discussed it 2 meetings ago. Waivers and special permits. I don't think town council is needed.
Okay. Anthony?
I am.
Before you start, are you saying because you don't, so you overall you don't want to continue, or you do want to continue? Amy?
Only if the applicant thinks he can get a signature on the application with all the owners, which includes the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay, Anthony? Oh, sorry.
Right. So I think it's difficult for me, to say, no, I won't allow you to go see what you can dig up. But it's understanding that it really depends. And I think I agree with Amy on this, is that the signature name would have to be on that Form C for me to change my mind about it. But I don't feel, I feel that it's within our purview to at least allow them to go and see what they can find, if they so want to. I mean, if they want to put that effort in.
Okay. Millie?
Yeah, I would be happy to look at this if they are willing to or able to get a signature on the Form C. I was also wondering, just out of curiosity, would it be possible to get a copy of the original application that was submitted for the 8M from the other from the parcel H? Is that something we could get a copy of what information was originally given to them? We have a copy of the permit and the permission, but I don't know what information was actually given to them originally on parcel. Is that something that we can get?
I'll check with my client.
Thank you.
Okay. So it sounds like then, Amy, if the applicant is willing to get some sort of signature, you're fine with continuing. Michelle wants to continue either way. Anthony, it sounds like you're willing to give the chance to go get some sort of signature.
Correct.
And Millie, you as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would make a majority willing to allow to get a signature, which would put us, let's see, to May, I guess May 4th. So we would need an extension through that. So the next available hearing is May 4th. So the extension, I don't know when the right time is to set for that. This time it was the day after. I don't know if that's, is there only a certain number of days for an extension? So maybe through the 7th? I'm not sure. What makes sense for timing? Kathy, do you have any input on that?
We'll extend the decision date out 2 weeks after that.
Okay, that's great. So we would be looking at May 4th. Do you foresee any, Kathy, we don't even have anything on the agenda, I assume, at that time.
No, you don't. It's right after town meeting. I was gonna suggest a little vacation.
Me too.
But that's fine. I mean, if you want to continue it to May 4th and then have the applicant, what did you say, two weeks out, Mark?
Yeah.
So then you know, take a vote to accept a continuance to May 18th for the decision to be filed.
Two separate votes.
Make it May 19th so you can get a decision done at your next meeting after the hearing. So
Okay,
yes,
so
so 2 votes, Carrie.
2 votes. Okay, so 1, and obviously, Attorney Donahue, you'll send a written request for the record.
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not, well, before we actually do that, let's make sure we get literally everything that we need. Are we down to this? Is ownership the component here? It sounds like Concom is something that we've reconciled with. We're down to, this is the component that we're looking at when we come back together.
And are you having town council?
Oh, yes. Can we, that would be the whole point, to have them advise or be a part of it or whatever the case.
And do you have specific questions for town council?
Well, just whether he can attend and provide any guidance, I guess. Is that what the board is looking for? Yes.
Yes. Carrie, I just had a question on the Concon. Are you guys in agreement with how the applicant wants to proceed with the conservation? Or because you just said, we understand now, are we all in agreement with it? Or are we still, we understand it but haven't decided on it yet?
I guess that's a good question. Any thoughts on that?
I think that, well, the tough part is not knowing where we are. So they basically have taken into consideration a lot with 150,000 square foot warehouse. So, so basically, I'm not going to call that worst case, but it is a case that's definitely more than just a road to nowhere. So I think it's fair, in my opinion, to I'm settled with Concom as is for now.
Okay. Wait, did you say that, Michelle, because you're not, or you didn't understand?
No, I was just for clarification, because in the discussion before, you guys were saying, are you looking for a waiver from Concom? When you're talking about waivers.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mean
Yeah.
explicitly a
Okay.
waiver. I was just.
So I just wanted, I think it was unfair of the applicant to come back and say, well, we still have Concon open. You know,
Right,
I
right.
just feel like if we can give them clarity now, give them clarity on Concon.
Yep. Any other, was that the board majority sentiment on that, on Concom?
Yeah.
I guess so, but I still have concerns because with the subdivision, if they develop out 3 lots, I mean, if this was residential, Concom would have input on the 3 lots that they could possibly develop. And I feel like,
Yeah, we'd have to make it a condition.
Right.
And figure out that way.
I just feel like we're skipping it. And when I look at the whole application, I feel like that's what we're being asked to skip all these things, all these regulations that were written way before we were here. And that's what I struggle with.
So Amy, they explain procedurally why they're doing it. And I understand you're stating your concern is if it was more than one, if they're going to have like 3 warehouses, what do we do now? Should it go back? Would you go to agreement with what Kerry suggested, was that if that were to happen, the applicant could come back before the planning board again, or before a board, or whatever they need to come back for Concon?
I'll have to think about that.
Okay.
You make promises and then things get skipped.
So not if it's a condition.
Wow. Okay, so but it sounds like that it's because Michelle and Anthony and Millie do not have an issue with the Concom, that majority wise would not have that issue. Potentially that would be an issue for some board members, but not a majority. So you have that information. Any other?
Right. So for me, there's maybe 3 more things that I'm thinking of. Part of the rules and regs, criteria for approval, no subdivision shall be approved unless it complies with these rules and regulations and with the applicable provisions of zoning and other town bylaws and regulations. And so we know that there's already 2 unbuildable lots. And I would like some clarification around that. And according to the rules and regs, it appears that we can't approve that. Secondly, on the 8M, I'm still kind of concerned about the number 5 with the authority may revoke this permit at any time. So how does that weigh in? Even if we get a signature, what does that mean? And what does that mean with the signature on? And then lastly, it goes back to the impact report, I think is probably a little out of touch with reality in terms of what's going on in that area today.
Okay.
Carrie, can I just answer one of Anthony's questions? Anthony, that first question you had about the unbuildable lots, that was asked of town council, and and his response was, yes, you can create an unbuildable lot as long as it's labeled as an unbuildable lot. So that was.
You just reminded me. He had asked about the history of the board, and I know you'd mentioned that you see that a lot on A&Rs, but we're going to look to see if you could find that on a past subdivision. Did you happen to see that at all?
I actually didn't. I must have forgotten about that, Carrie.
You just reminded me when you said that.
Like I said, it's quite common on approval not required plans. I mean, short of going through our multiple subdivision plans, I got to think about, I don't know how we would find that.
Yeah, I just remember he asked historically, has the board done that? And you knew right off the bat that for sure on A&Rs, but not for sure on subdivisions. And I thought you were looking for one if we had one.
I can see what we can research about that, but I mean so I'll have to get back to you on that. I got to think about how we would even go through our files.
Are you looking for like a subdivision where the subdivision has land and part of that subdivision on that land is an undevelopable lot? Are you looking for that?
Yeah, do you know what one is? Well, Kathy.
I can find that because I do real estate. I know how to get that to you. I can find that. Yeah.
Okay, so great. Okay, anything else that we want to make sure we make very clear so that we're not continuing this till forever?
Well, do you think we need some sort of staff memo about the environmental report that we received? You know, we asked for a staff statement on it, whether it be Mia or Fred or Kathy, just what they, you know, what if they approved of the environmental review or what their input was, as it was 700 pages.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you historically, I mean, we certainly, you know, we look at everything that's submitted, but, you know, I'll be the first one to tell you, I mean, none of us are environmental scientists. And you saw how specialized that person from Sanborn was. And again, historically, we relied on the data that's provided. You know, the town is not responsible for any of those, for the follow-up on those spills. It's between the property owner and DEP. You know, I mean, people constantly call here asking us for those reports. You know, if we have those on file when someone is either refinancing, you know, typically it's on commercial or industrial property. But if someone is, you know, refinancing or a new property owner is taking over. But
well, I guess that's good to know. So like staff statement would be that's up to the property owners and the, you know, it doesn't fall under.
We've never prepared one in 30 years. I mean, we've never commented on a phase 1 environmental assessment. I mean, it's required as part of the application. It's prepared, it's submitted, and it provides you information. You know, there isn't any action that the town takes on a phase 1 report, unless we were doing it for property that we owned.
Well, I guess because it's our groundwater, you know, it's on our groundwater. And the groundwater, it's a groundwater 3 and it borders groundwater 1. So I would think the town owns the wells that would get water from anything that was contaminated. So I was just hoping that maybe Mia or someone on staff would look at that and say, you know, there's nothing more to see here, or maybe we need a phase 2.
None of us are qualified to make those statements, Amy. And it's the DEP that determines whether a phase 2 needs to happen.
Okay.
Okay, so we have this report. It includes the opinion and shall include not only, okay, yep. All right, so we do have this. We don't have any real actionable, I don't want to say actionable intelligence, but there's nothing, we're just looking at it as part of the application. We know that there are hazardous substances or petroleum products. We know that it's been identified, the site has the subject site has the REC on it. But the phase 1 report is also related to the warehouse. So again, we run into that issue of a disconnect in the old application versus new. I guess I'm wondering why we're asking the applicant to come up with this site assessment, which is quite extensive, but we're not, but to then what? To look at it and just check it off? Or is there something, if something is found in here, what is our role in subdivision law to make sure that we're, you know, meeting all the check boxes that we have to meet? If we do see a problem in this assessment, then what?
No, they're required to do this. We're not requiring them to do a phase 1. they have to do a phase one. Like I said, usually it has to do with financing. I forgot some of the other examples or the reasons that the gentleman gave, but they would be doing a phase one anyways. We're asking that we be supplied with that,
Okay,
with their phase one. But that phase one is something that the state requires.
okay. So it's part of our application, the contents that they submit to us. And if they submit it and there's something with it that is a red flag, then what? Just noted, duly noted, or what are we to do with this information?
Well, I think as the gentleman explained it at the meeting, he talked about how, again, it's between the owner of the property and I believed it was that it was DEP. Maybe Dave Robinson can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's under our purview to make an action to happen. I don't think it's under our purview to follow this through the trail and make sure that they're doing all the stuff. I'm just wondering, as it relates to the subdivision application, it's part of the application and something has been flagged and Concom's not looking at it and staff doesn't necessarily have to comment. So what are we to do with this information? I guess I'm just wondering.
Well, I mean, it's information that becomes part of the file. I mean, that's we have public files. So again, there isn't anything actionable that the board does or that the town does.
Okay. Any questions or thoughts on that?
I think, Carrie, if they had a need to go deeper, then there is something that the state puts in that if you don't mitigate it, or if you can't start a construction project without it being addressed. And if you do, there are fines. Because I believe they have wells that are monitoring.
Yep.
But,
I mean, we have them all over this town.
yeah.
Is monitoring wells,
Yeah.
but again, they're on private property. The town is not doing anything with those wells. It's not our responsibility. It's not our jurisdiction. And it's DEP that is reported to.
Yeah, so if they were to get worse, they are being monitored, but it's not through the town, it's not through us.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments or thoughts on that? Okay, so we are not looking for any, obviously we're not asking for a phase two, that's not even in our jurisdiction. That was just to clarify a little bit. Any other comments or thoughts that the applicant should know before we move to continue? Whoops. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, I'm just gonna, Amy, did you have something?
Well, I guess I've said it a couple times and I don't know how other board members feel, but this is a subdivision road and there are a couple lots and, we talked about traffic, but traffic is only allowed. They're only talking about the road with no application. So to fully look at the traffic, like it's mentioned, traffic hazard, I would think we would need some sort of report that shows if lot H1, B2, and B1 were developed, what would be the traffic impact? And maybe other board members don't feel the same way. It's just one of the parts of our subdivision rules and regulations. When you go down the decision criteria, it talks about traffic hazards. And I don't feel the answer can be, well, this is a road to nowhere, so we have no traffic impact.
Yeah, I think the traffic, the plan that we have, I think there were still some issues with it in general. I didn't think it properly reflected what we actually do have there, but I don't really know how to solve that or how deep we can actually go into that. Again, I think to your point, the impact, because this isn't really the application of the desired outcome, it's an application in lieu of the desired outcome. It's hard to figure out the impact. If we're not seeing the actual plan of what's desired, it's hard to look at the true impact that would come out of this. And I think that's not just a traffic plan, that spans across a lot of this, that makes it, I think, difficult for the board, but I don't know how to resolve that.
Right, because we've already been told that 2 of the lots are buildable, and the third one, even though it's non-conforming, it was even mentioned at one meeting with the variance, they could still build on it. So now we're going up to 3 lots. I don't think the 4th one can be developed that much because it's all wetlands, but.
Okay. Well, I think the overall message on that is just a general issue with understanding impact. I don't know if there's any one specific takeaway. I think it's just a continued struggle that has been noted since the preliminary. So I guess since almost 6 months now has been noted as not being solved, and I guess still isn't solved. So I don't know how we're going to solve that 6 months later. I guess it's noted and the applicant can decide how they want to handle that.
So can I just ask a question about, I don't know if it relates to subdivision, but the development of this lot in relation to whether or not it suits the qualifications for an industrial campus development that we have listed in our zoning under 7-10030, page 7, 114. Is that something that's completely different than what might fit or be worth looking into? Is that something we can look into next? If anybody has, maybe Kathy, maybe you have some answers on that. It talks about parcels 5 or more acres in the industrial district may be considered for IOCD approval. Purposes for industrial office campus development to encourage planned campus or development in the industrial through use of a master plan or designed for compatibility with nearby residential or commercial areas. Sorry if I'm looking away and reading. Is that just something that just doesn't apply to this?
Well, I mean, an applicant would need to, determine if that's the route that they wanted to take, such as not so much with the campus development, but the major commercial overlay district has been enacted by a couple different applicants out on Route 20. Some of the Northborough crossing, and then across the street where the ball fields and actually the frontage parcels. So, yeah. But that was the applicant, deciding to, take advantage of the zoning where he could, or where they could benefit from using that zoning. So here with the campus development, several years ago, Saint-Gobain utilized that. And what they did was they master planned their site that, they already had X amount of square footage built. And then they wanted to look out about 10, 15 years and get that all approved at once. And the planning board worked with them and did that. And so that then it became like this phased development.
Okay.
That as they grew and, developed various products, they added on, to their site, but it had been, previously approved by the planning board as a master plan of that site.
Okay, so
again, that's something that the applicant would choose to do.
That's their choice to do it that way then. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any additional thoughts or questions before we close? hold on. I'm gonna actually, John, I'm gonna bring you in for a second. I think I don't know if you have your hand up by accident or you mean to, I'll let you speak if you, in a butter.
Sorry. Yeah, are you allowing public comment on the request for a waiver?
I'm sure you can comment. That's okay.
Sorry, I didn't want to overstep my limits here. You know, this application is just full of holes. I mean, it's, you know, as Mr. Zaiton pointed out, it says very, very clearly in the bylaws that ownership is ownership. And this applicant's been told, and I know because I've attended the meetings that you guys have too, on multiple occasions to resolve their issues with the MWRA. And they have entirely failed to do so. And allowing them to have a waiver at this late point in the game is really not consistent with the zoning bylaws, nor is it consistent with the, you know, the spirit of their application process. You know, you guys have told them multiple times to resolve their issues with the MWRA, and now at the 11th hour they ask for a waiver on ownership, which is ludicrous. That certainly you guys have given them every opportunity to approach the MWRA and resolve this issue to your satisfaction, and they have not. And it's entirely inconsistent with the very clear part of the bylaw that says applicants must be owners, and they are not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think, and just thinking of that, it sounds like the stance of the board is that if there is no need for a waiver, because if the owner signs the application, then there is no need for a waiver. And that's something that the board has agreed that will continue in order to provide that opportunity. It also sounds like short of that, the board is not interested in granting an ownership waiver. The majority is not interested in an ownership waiver. Is that also correct? Yes.
For me, sure.
Yes. Okay, so same for me. So a majority of the board is not interested in an ownership waiver, but the board is willing to give you a chance to get ownership, co-ownership signature. So I just want to make sure that's clear to everybody that that's what we're leaving with, so that we're not back arguing the same exact argument in May.
That's correct.
Okay.
Harry, you know, I'm sorry, just for my purposes, can you just restate that? The majority of the board is not willing to grant a waiver for
Ownership.
Okay.
So they're not willing to waive the ownership requirements. So the majority of the board is not willing to waive the ownership requirements as outlined in the rules and regs. But the board is willing to give the applicant the chance to get the the applicant to co-sign on the Form C to show as an owner. So what we don't want is to come back here in May and have the same exact argument for all over again. So it's pretty clear at this point what works and what doesn't work. So I just want to make sure that we understand that. And then if I think that's it, actually. I think that's it. Okay, with that, so it sounds like in that case, because the majority of the board is willing to allow that time to do so, that we'll set a deadline for that May 4th meeting. We'll come back, we'll see what we have at that point, and then from there we will make a decision. The extension, we need to vote on first that it's continued, second that the decision is due on the 19th. So if there's no further comments, any further comments from the board or applicants or staff? Okay, I see none. So why don't I will accept a motion to continue the 0 Bartlett Street subdivision definitive application to May 4th at 6 p.m.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Millie?
Aye.
I guess it doesn't matter. Do I need to accept the decision moved out before I continue the hearing? I guess it doesn't matter. Okay. Anthony,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Michelle,
I,
and Carrie's an aye. Secondarily, we need to accept the decision due date moved to May 19th. So the decision on the definitive subdivision application, this was a motion to extend the due date to May 18th. Is there a motion?
19th.
I'm sorry.
I think you just said 18th. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant 19th, May 19th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Millie?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Michelle?
I,
Aye. And Carrie's an aye. So then we will look for a written confirmation of that, and we can file that with the town clerk, and we will be prepared to see you back in May.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We don't have too much time remaining. That ends our public hearing. So we are now down to the whole business. Why don't we quickly just take a few minutes to look at the January 19th minutes, because we're a little behind. We didn't get to view them last time. We continue them to today. Were there any modifications to the January 19th minutes?
I had some that needed clarification. I don't know if we want to just go through that page by page.
Sure.
So on the page 1, I don't know how to share it. So it's the last line where it says, Mr. Litchfield said it's been his understanding that the groundwater overlay district has been mainly for the use for the determination by the committee. Is that groundwater committee, or to see what safeguards? I wasn't quite sure what committee that was.
Yes, I would think it's groundwater committee, so maybe that word should be added.
Yeah. Just to clarify on that.
Kathy, do you see that, where that is? Okay.
And the other thing was I did listen to parts of it, and so now we're going to go to page 3, and it's actually almost smack in the middle of that large paragraph, that large one, first one, where Mr. Federico said they gave. Do you know where I'm talking about, Kathy? Did you catch that?
Yes, I saw that too. I flagged it too.
Okay. Okay. He negated. It says they gave virtually every expert, and it really should say Mr. Federico said they negated virtually every expert in the area. Does that make sense, Kathy?
Yep.
Okay. All right, you're on it. The whole idea of the variance, I'm trying to think. Can't even read my notes. I did this so long ago, I feel like I can't remember. I think that's really going to be it. Everything else is just for my own clarification.
Okay. Any other
I have a
comments?
couple too, but the same thing with Millie. I did it so long ago, I have to find them. But I'm going to try to share my screen. Not that it matters.
Or you had changes too that you had sent?
Yes, yep,
Okay, you'll do those next.
sure.
Let's see. I just want to be able to scroll.
I got to figure out how to do this.
Okay. Hey. Did it change on the screen? changed
mean?
on my page. Wait a sec. Okay. So for me, on the page that's showing right here, it says is, and I thought the word was it.
What
Does
page
it?
are you on? Page three?
Let's see.
Page
Yeah,
three?
must be page 3. So, and then I said confusing sentence, but Millie just clarified that.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, Amy, you're not lined up with the printed version, so I don't know where.
Oh,
She's on,
probably because I added the review, it changed.
so she's on the top of page 3. Ms. Backstrom asked if,
Part of it, okay, I see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right before it says is, I think it's supposed to be it.
Yep.
oh, good.
Okay.
Okay.
And then under the Mr. Federico that Millie just changed, I don't know if my computer changed this. I didn't go back and check. But is this what she said? There was a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Maybe it says there, but maybe my computer says RE.
There was a lot of back and forth and a memo from another. Yeah.
If it already says there, then it's fine.
Okay.
Then I'm going down a couple sentences. Mr. Federico asked, what is he supposed to do when someone comes up? She said nothing. Like, I just wanted to take out the she said nothing. Like, it just seemed like in some places there were, I don't know. To me, it didn't make sense when I was reading it before.
Right, because you don't know if that's an answer to the question, what are we supposed to do? Nothing, or that she actually said nothing.
Right. So because I didn't want to go back and listen to it all, I thought,
no,
maybe just take it out.
Yeah.
I must be tired. That's really funny to me.
I know. Or she said it is just the same. Yeah, just take out.
Oh, I do remember. Was this me actually? I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
making a
you.
joke and not being serious. Okay. So he was concerned that what this was going to do is create like a whole extra set of process for him. And that was his concern. So Maya was just saying to him, it wouldn't do anything. There's no additional work for you. It wouldn't change it. I mean, you could take out, she said nothing and it wouldn't really change anything. I think it's fine to strike that. It doesn't change. The answer is there's no additional work.
Okay. I just didn't know if that sentence made
Jumbled.
sense to you guys.
Yeah, you could take that out. It's fine.
Okay.
And then I'm going down a couple paragraphs to craft breweries. And where Miss Paretsky was trying to figure out how to use open warehouses or places in industrial, it was in the industrial district. Just seemed like it made more sense and it in industrial than in an industrial.
Okay.
And where she said they seem to have 2 different uses. I'm not sure what that even means. It doesn't seem like it fits there. What has 2 different uses? Like, I think because it summarized some of the parts. I don't know. To me, that didn't make sense. So I was just taking it out.
Yeah, I think it was more like they seem to fit the 2 different uses. But you could just take it out.
Okay. So then, let's see. And for this sentence right here, I don't know what page we're on, but we're on prohibited uses near the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought where it says Ms. Paretsky said they were going to review up to N on the provided example list. Because it doesn't make sense if you read it, if you don't know what N is, if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
reading this. So Ms. Paretsky said they were going to review up to N on the provided example list.
Okay. All right.
And then for the next sentence, as Ms. Baxter said, P incorporates everything in the entire list. So why do you need the list? And then Ms. Paretsky thinks there are different opinions on what comes in. And I just changed that to what is allowed and how uses are interpreted. Like what comes in didn't make sense to me either. The next minutes I didn't have changes to, but this one I did because it was longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm on contractor's yard. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like around the 12th sentence, it says, what is the downsize? But I think it's supposed to be, what is the downside?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what I was saying on this one. Well, just because it's so late. And like you said, I have read this so long ago. And you can just leave that one because there's a lot of words. Down to non-conforming. Ms. Paretsky would like to add a purpose and intent to, did it say the section? And then I was taking out this and believes having a purpose and intent section. This sentence, I guess, didn't make sense to me at the time. So I changed the sentence of non-conforming. Ms. Paretsky would like to add a purpose and intent to the section, period. She was unsure why 50 Southwest cutoff didn't trigger the need for a non-conforming to non-conforming special permit. I don't know what was originally there because so long ago. It looks like I just crossed out a couple words and tried to, I used the same words, but I tried to rearrange it so it made sense. And I could send this to you, Kathy, if you want. It's too late.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you all need to vote on the changes. So, Melanie will be reviewing this tape. I mean, she's on the meeting now, but.
Yep.
So just keep going with your changes and.
Okay. Does anyone think this sentence makes more sense? Ms. Paretsky would like to add a purpose and intent to the section, period. She was unsure why 50 Southwest didn't trigger the need for non-conforming to non-conforming special permit.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, maybe the way she wrote it, Amy, was just because that's the way you said it. So I can understand you're reading now what you said and it didn't make sense and you want to just add clarity to it.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Well, I'm assuming that's why she wrote it like that, because that's what you said.
Yeah.
Some of the words were wrong in some of the places, and I'm not being critical. It's just.
Yeah.
And this, I'm at the bottom of. Which one am I on? I'm on the bottom of non-conforming.
Yeah.
And Ms. Paretsky asked during class, and it is not, instead of by definition, I said is not the definition of the use that makes it grandfathered use. It has to be the actual underlying use, and gave an example. And then how it said it gave an example, I wanted to add the example that I gave. Ms. Paretsky stated you don't just grandfather a warehouse to a warehouse. It's the actual use taking place in the warehouse that is grandfathered. Because I thought that was important, the example that I gave.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom it says, Ms. Paretsky said in the class she went to that if there is a change in structure, there could be something in the bylaw wording that the zoning enforcement officer can make that decision. And then this sentence said, when it's a use, I guess maybe the use wasn't there. Oh, maybe I put the little parentheses around it
Yep.
because there were different things between use and structure. And I think, I don't know.
To have, that's confusing about this is when someone's reading this, is they need to understand that you went out on your own to take a class. And through the class, you heard something taught by a professor. It's not noted here or by a lawyer, whoever taught the class. And then you brought it back as, you know, what you heard in class. So I think, you know, if you're going to use all these comments or statements, it's good to clarify that you attended a class and this is what you heard in the class, right?
Mhm.
So,
I
because
think that's what I said. Ms. Paretsky said in the class that you went to.
what class?
It was probably up further. I'd have to go back and the non-conforming. I'm in the non-conforming bylaw and I talked about how I took a class.
No, I get that. I just think moving forward, when we are writing our minutes or doing our decisions, if we're going to say, I took a class, that I think we need to know more about the class. I know you said the class, but where was it taught? You know, just more information.
They're all the
So-
CPTC classes.
All
They're
right,
all online.
I get that, but do you see, is it in the minutes that it's a CMRPC class?
Do you want me to add it? I
think
could.
it's helpful.
Okay, so on page 5 where it says Ms. Paretsky said in the class, Ms. Paretsky said in the, I always forget, it's a citizens.
How about Ms. Paretsky said in a CMRPC class she took?
It wasn't, it's CPTC.
Yeah, whatever. it is,
Different
you know the
thing.
point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
So Ms. Paretsky said in the CPTC non-conforming bylaw class that she went to, they said if there's a change, and I put parentheses around in structure, then a parentheses around use. I didn't change the words.
Okay.
And then at the bottom of the non-conforming use, it's within the right of the town to freeze the use in place.
Oh, yeah.
And then for the next section, because it was a public hearing about a common driveway, a couple times she said Ms. Gillespie recused herself from the matter. I didn't know if we should say recused herself from the public hearing.
It's probably a good clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And then in that same paragraph, when it says meeting, it was, he has a continued meeting, but it's a continued hearing.
Oh.
It's just a couple of places where it said meeting, but it was a hearing, but. And then getting down, I think that might be almost it. The same thing for the public hearing for Bartlett. Ms. Gillespie returned to the meeting, but it's really, she returned to the public hearing. And those were just notes when I was reading it. These are just notes when I went back to read. Oh, on page 13, at least in mine, it looks like that's just needs a parenthesis. It's just spread out.
Okay.
So I guess I don't have to change any of that. I was just adding.
Are these additional changes or no?
No, I was scrolling down,
Okay.
but
But no, but anything in pink, is that a change or just questions for you?
I'm trying to see.
Like, for example, missing a word or,
Right. I guess that's it. For me, these were all just notes that I had.
okay, but it does look like Attorney Donahue stated. Oops, the
Sorry.
road.
Yeah,
It really was missing the word stated, but.
Yeah. Sorry, I just shut it. There was just missing one word stated. And that was all. If I go to the bottom.
Okay, any additional, Michelle, did you have any edits or Anthony?
I
Nothing.
did not.
Okay, I just had a couple of quick things. Some of them are actually already covered, so I guess we had the same eyes or on the same wavelength. So I just had a suggestion on page, the first page where it talked about accessory dwelling units. Just putting in parentheses under next to residential A and B, just in parentheses RA and RB, just for people who read the minutes. They may be confused that means there's a, maybe this wouldn't be the case, but there's a residential A and B, like that's a one unit, but it's really RA and RB. So I just wanted, for anybody reading the minutes, I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh,
Does that make sense, Kathy? I think you might be on mute. All right, I'm gonna go with it makes sense. Let's see. Oh, I should just share. I don't want to spend too much time, but just quickly. So that was the RA and RB, just parentheses. Some are minor. We don't have to belabor too much, but that I thought was a good one to fix, the RA and RB. I just wanted to clarify that what I had said was that this is on page 2, that when you apply for a special permit site plan approval, you need to have the special permit process follow the same path. So it wasn't just about you need to have a special permit. That's obvious with the application. The point was this next piece of it, which I had stated, that you need to follow the same path.
oh yeah.
Yep. So that just makes that clarifies a little bit. I just corrected that same thing down here later on page 2, where I said that they have to figure out a way they're not two different paths to the same special permit. So it's really just, again, making sure it's what I was saying is it's about the path. Again, same edit down. Ms. Martinek said she just wanted to make the path the same. I'm not looking to make the same like whole process permit. I want the path to be the same. Okay, same, I noted this as well. We've already corrected it with the negated Mr. Federico, that line. I didn't know what it, Millie, you actually figured out what it was. I had no idea. I said strike it, but we figured it out, so that's good. Same thing Amy pointed out, actually. I didn't think it was clear what N was or P was, so someone reading the minutes would really not know what this means. I think we just cleared this up, so that's good too. Okay, oh yes, this part. Okay, so in general, I actually made a comment here. So my preference for the minutes, and I don't know how other board members feel, is that I don't necessarily want to record things that make things look, either the applicant look negative or board members look negative. So this whole section was really about, that that Attorney Donahue was muted, and that whole instance of that, which is fine to include, but if we're going to include it, well, first of all, I guess I commented was my preference is that if we disagree, like for example, if Amy and I disagree and Amy, I say to you, well, you're stupid or something negative, I'd rather the minutes just say that Carrie and Amy disagreed on X, not like reflect something that makes, negative comments or poor comments. So I just wanted to point it out here, and I don't really care which way this goes, but I just wanted to, maybe for Melanie's benefit, that if there is something that is negative or presents in a negative light, but it's not critical to allowing people to understand how what the minutes say, then maybe we just say, what did I say here? Hold on, I can't see, this is in the way. Okay, so either summarize, the board and the applicant took time to agree on the presentation, or just remove it, or just if we want to include it, that's fine too. But I just would want to clarify that the reason why that Attorney Donahue was muted is because he had ignored repeated requests to use the time appropriately by making the presentation rather than advising the board on what constitutes a subdivision. I don't care which way we go. I just wanted to at least mention that, and it can go either way. But if we want to keep it, I would like to clarify why that was the case, not just say like I'm off willy-nilly muting people. Like a, so that was my comment there. I don't know, does the board have any thoughts on that? I know in the past we've had discussions about minutes being negative, and I just wanted, any thoughts on that in general?
It's up to you either way you want to do it.
Yeah, I think adding more color to the commentary makes sense, or the minutes if need be, or if just stripping out that kind of dialogue probably is fine as well. I don't know.
All right, I'm happy if we just add that. I mean, I don't want to strike a whole section, and I don't know if people need this or if it reflects other things, and that's fine with me. I mean, it's not even a big deal. You know, it's just something I want to make sure that we don't, I don't like minutes that reflect negative things. So I just wanted to at least point that out.
Yeah.
So maybe if we can just put it into context, and that's fine. That's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, let's see. I think I only had, that was it. That was it, actually. Nothing else from me. Okay. So no further edits to those minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to accept the minutes as amended? Approve the minutes as amended.
I make a motion to approve the January 19th minutes as amended.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, Kelly?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Carries an aye. Okay, since we are a little late, do you mind if we push February to next time around to square that up? Is that okay with everybody?
Good with me.
It's up to you.
All right, just quickly, Kathy, I know we're getting late, but I just wanted to talk to the board about that DTLA grant. Do you mind speaking to that at all, or do you want me to?
No, sure. One of the things that Carrie and I have talked about, and I get, you know, it's discussed a lot at the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission meetings. There's a program that which is called oh my God. Yes,
DLTA.
right, but it's oh my God.
District Local Technical.
Basically, yeah, I was gonna say, it's basically technical assistance.
I cheated, I looked at the agenda.
that the Regional Planning Commission will, you know, help communities with, but you have to apply for it. And so one of the things we talked about was after the planning board meeting where the traffic presentation was made, one of the suggestions from Central Mass was the neighborhood audit, was to conduct a neighborhood audit. So that is one of the things that they could assist us with. So they would need to, well, it would be with, you know, obviously with me also, but we would need to submit an application by March 24th. So I don't think it's a super complicated application, but it's something that if everyone is in favor of, you know, we'll go forward with Sujatha, who, you know, was the one who made the presentation. She would assist us with filling out the application, and then they would assist us with actually, you know, doing the neighborhood audit.
For a specific designated neighborhood area, or the
right? Well, I mean, in the presentation, it was specifically talked about for Bartlett Street.
Okay. Yeah.
And involving the high school students and,
yeah,
you know, and residents, you know, on the street, and businesses in the area.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. It's a great opportunity. Okay, and so she didn't get back to you, I assume, but that's
no, just other than, our quick email exchange with her. So I'm sure I'll hear from her tomorrow.
Okay, great. I think there's a deadline of that of March 24th. So hopefully it did, like you said, Kathy, I don't think it sounds that cumbersome and they're going to help us write it. And that would be really nice to get something like that. I think it would make people feel good that, moving forward with little things like that just shows, progress and action and all of that. So that's exciting. Any other things that we have to cover? A&Rs, lot releases, or bonds?
No, someone did submit an A&R, but it's not, they need to do some work on it before it's ready for the board to sign.
Okay, so if they have to do work on it, we're not obligated to the deadlines of an A&R.
No, what I did today was just notify them that the board can't sign it the way that it's been submitted. They don't meet they're moving a lot line, or they are proposing to move a lot line. And by doing so, they lose their grandfathering, and they're in a groundwater 2 district. So they need to meet 40,000 square feet, and neither lot meets 40,000 square feet. So.
Okay, all right. Okay, so it sounds like we'll look at that when it comes back around. And then it looks like for our next meeting, we have the public hearing for proposed zoning amendments. So for anyone in the public still hanging on here, that public hearing will be next in April. Format wise, Kathy, I believe in the past, what should we work with as our working document as we go through? Are you drafting? So usually, do you send us what we have for all our bylaws in a?
Yes, yep. I'll put together a packet that that basically is available, will be available to anybody. But it'll be referenced in the legal hearing ad, and it'll be everything that is as it appears in the warrant right now, and then including the clarification or the addition on the non-conforming article.
Okay. Great. So that public hearing will happen then. We have a public hearing for revised 399 Hudson Street, and then we have a public hearing for 425 Whitney Street. Was that all settled with the peer reviewers were able to go?
It's not yet, and I can. I was gonna say I can provide you an update offline, but I mean because we don't have a solution yet, but we're working on it. As far as what's considered peer review versus what, some additional information that we may need from the applicant. So I'm working with both the peer reviewer and the applicant on how that information is going to come together.
Okay. I had a quick question, and it's late, so I don't know. It just had to do with the peer review too, like the original peer review, one of them, we had questions for town council. Did we ever send those to him?
Yeah, those were sent like months ago, and I've since reminded him that, for the April 6th meeting.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. And then, obviously I'm not, I don't intend, I'm not drilling down on this application in terms of like discussing it content wise, but just formality wise. I just sent a question to you before about the application itself. I'll just quickly share what I'm looking at.
For which one, Carrie?
So this was just for 425.
Oh,
so,
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have consistently that it's site plan review, site plan with special permit review. But here it's only listed as site plan. So I don't think this is correct. And I just want to make sure that this is just a clerical error and not.
I believe that and I'll follow up on that, Carrie. I believe after you asked me that, I sent the question to the applicant, and I'm going to assume that it's somewhere in their inbox too.
Okay.
But I'll circle back with them on that.
Okay, great. Then it looks like, that's it. We don't have no ZBA, anything with ZBA, and that's it. And annual town meeting is May 1st, 2021 at 9 a.m. Okay, and I have no other business unless there's anything else.
Not for me.
Okay, great. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Good night,
Seconded.
everyone.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, actually, you didn't vote, sorry.
Oh, yeah, Kathy. Millie,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
Michelle,
Aye.